Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm going live about now. This is definitely a long announcement week. Well, 3 days is quite typical these days for Apple, but yesterday was just so jam packed that we just had to stream for 4 hours overall. Today, stream is going to be a lot shorter, but in some ways much more interesting for a broader market because yesterday we were talking about the hype behind the M5 Pro and M5 Max chip in a new MacBook Pro. We talked about the MacBook Air getting double the base storage, even the base M5 MacBook Pro getting double the storage. However, across it all, we've always known, or at least for like the last year or so, that Apple is working on some form of cheaper MacBook. And today we have gotten the answer. Well, to be quite honest, we've actually gotten the answer yesterday when websites like 95Mac, Mac Rumors were able to leak the MacBook Neo because Apple themselves leaked it on their website. And yes, today we have gotten it as a confirmation officially from Apple. The MacBook Neo comes out with an A18 processor, a 13-inch display, actually a decent display. Like there are some downsides, but if you're a hater of notches, you will like this one. And of course, a $599 starting price. We'll get to all the pluses and minus advantages and disadvantages versus the rest of the Macs. I'm gonna shrink myself down as we slowly transition fully into the story. Before I go all in on the actual storyline, please, guys, if you're watching this and enjoying this, subscribe to the channel. That helps the channel tremendously. Like the video, share it out with anybody who you think might enjoy it, and comment. I love reading your comments down below. Make it a super chat if you want to support me directly and want to insist on your message being read out. And of course, you can support this channel directly in the long term by becoming a channel member. Shout out to Angelica, Steve, Max, Maximus, and Jonathan, our MarkTech Pro Max level supporters. Already see a few people in the chat. Jan, one of my few German viewers, saying that it's an interesting product. He himself has a Mac Mini M4, but on the go, this sounds like a good option. By the way, isn't the A18 iPad coming? Well, apparently not today. This has always been part of the release story for this spring. We did not know, well, and I guess we kind of do now, which devices are launching basically now in March and which ones are launching more around the WWDC time. It could be anywhere from like May or even like July. At the very latest, could be right at WWDC. So some of the products that we're still expecting is an A18 based iPad. Now there are some talks that it might come alongside the redesigned iPad mini later in the year. We'll have to see. I'll have to say the base iPad does not look that great in the lineup at this point. It really needs some value upgrades. And of course, the Mac Studio. We just got the Studio Display and the Studio Display XDR. Kind of sounds silly to have an M3 Ultra $4,000 Mac Studio in the lineup when you can get an M5 Max MacBook Pro for the same money. Except for RAM capacity, it will match it at the very least, match it and even exceed it in many ways, especially when it comes to the CPU and stuff like single-threaded performance, architecturally when it comes to the GPU, like its advanced neural processors. Yeah, I mean, today we're looking at the lower end. Apple made this basically a mini event for the press, while all the other announcements that we've talked about this week, the M5 MacBook Air, the M4 iPad Air, the iPhone 17e, all of that apparently wasn't worth for Apple to just put into one like spring event. I mean, I cannot be angry. I get way more live viewers reacting to the newsroom pages than I do to a live event because obviously I cannot stream an Apple event. I can only stream my face during an event as kind of like a live reaction, but that's really not quite ideal. Many people saying hi. It said that the M4 iPad Air has 128 gigs, not 256. Yeah, I mean, especially now that we have a 599 MacBook with 256 gigabytes, but then there is RAM discrepancy where the MacBook Neo actually has less RAM than an iPad Air. It's very clearly that Apple wants to position basically the Mac as a more expensive product versus the iPad. I wouldn't be surprised if like the redesign, well, I'm not sure if it's going to be redesigned, but if an upgraded base iPad ends up being called iPad Neo to coincide with all this. Rosa joining the chat, Riley saying hi, one of our most prolific yappers in the live chat. Jan saying he is not quite sure between the iPad Air and MacBook Neo. The iPad has 12 gigs of RAM. Well, with the iPad, you also need to consider the benefits of the form factor, right? Are you getting anything out of the idea, the fact that you get support for the Apple Pencil, right? Obviously, the iPad app ecosystem, especially for lighter stuff, right? Your Netflixes and stuff like that. Sure, all of it works through the browser on the Mac, but there's a convenience there. Obviously, if you want to make your iPad Air feel a lot more like a laptop, once you add like a keyboard accessory, trackpad accessory, all that stuff, it becomes a lot more expensive, especially if we are looking at the comparably sized iPad Air to the MacBook Neo. Like the 11-inch version starts at $599. This is the 13-inch MacBook Neo. In fact, it's the only MacBook Neo. Riley saying, this was my next MacBook, looking good. Well, you will have to inform us in the live chat in the future how it's all working for you. Chilling with Tech saying, join the Discord. That means a lot to me. There's so many great people in the Discord. I'm gonna leave you a hi in the Discord. I already see all my other boys are waving for you. I always love having people in the Discord, because in the Discord is also where I let you know when I'm going live. You guys can send me topics to react to. So while I do encourage people to like comment, of course, especially live here on YouTube, and especially super chats if you can find it in you. But overall, I do like afterwards going to the Discord way more than I do like going through YouTube comments, right? Johnny saying there's any word on SSD speed difference between 256 and 512 gigabytes. I'm not sure. This is the A18 storage. So my speculation is this is actually going to be storage at around 1.5, 1.7 gigabits per second. Because don't forget, it wasn't until the A19 Pro or A19 generation in general that Apple doubled storage from that. So my speculation, this is actually going to be half the storage speed of the previous MacBook Air and about a quarter. Maybe there will be some difference between the 256 and 512 gigabyte versions. I wouldn't expect one of them to be like double the modules. But we'll have to see. Like, thankfully, because it actually starts at a sensible price, and the upgrade from 256 gigabytes to 512 gigabytes is actually one of the cheapest in Apple's history. It's $100 rather than the usual $200, which is a completely outrageous amount of money for that amount of extra storage. I hope that a lot of YouTubers can actually order potentially both storage configurations and tell us if there is this, beyond obviously the capacity, if there is a storage speed benefit to getting the higher end configuration. Chilling with Tech, imagine if this started at $499, it would have flew off the windows. It actually does start at $599. That's its education price. This is actually one thing where education pricing is really beneficial as part of the lineup, because Apple does like $100 discount on the MacBook Air, right? Think about it. The MacBook Air is now $1099. If you cut off $100, that's less than 10% of the price. If you cut off $100 from $599 down to $499, that's 1/6 of a price, right? That's 16%. That's way, way better of a deal. So this device is very much tuned for the education market. Now imagine if this dropped to $99. Yeah, me personally gonna wait for cellular. There's contrary to some rumors, though those rumors mostly didn't come from very reputable sources. This does not get the C1X or anything. This is also, by the way, like, I know some people before you are deciding between like an iPad and a Mac. If you're somebody like me who always gets iPads with cellular, this is going to be a difference. This simply does not offer it. Jan, yeah, you have to pay. We'll have to get. We'll get through the details. We'll react to the newsroom report, to the website, to the tech specs. But yes, you have to get the 512 gigabyte version to get Touch ID. It's actually a little bit of a trick that Apple used to pull with their external keyboards, which made more sense over there. So the $600 version does have some notable compromises here still. 8 gigs of RAM is not enough for me, but I love the new yellow color. Well, I don't think that if you are in my chat, you're probably some kind of enthusiast. Look, you might not be rich, you might be a student, even you might be dirt poor by like Apple standards, right? I mean, Apple freaking sells us $7,000 Mac Pros with $700 wheels, right? And this channel is for all of you. I do try to cover even tech that's not as appealing to me, whether it might be tech that's so outrageously expensive that I wouldn't consider buying it, or tech that's so underspec that I, as an enthusiast, just wouldn't be excited about it. The MacBook Neo actually does feel more exciting to me than I expected. Now, not in the sense that I would buy it. I myself have a 14-inch M1 Max MacBook Pro, so you guys can guess what kind of upgrade I'm looking for. Were to like Tandem OLED, M6 or M7 processor. Like some of you, I'm considering getting one with, at that point, maybe like a C2X or C3X modem. I want 2 terabytes of storage at the very least at that point. So this won't appeal to me as a standalone product in my lineup, but it's interesting as part of Apple's lineup. And I just noticed that the wallpaper says the name. Yeah, okay, you guys found out that education pricing is pretty good. And yeah, I wanted to say something about the 8 gigs of RAM. The 8 gigs of RAM is because this is basically a little bit of a Chromebook killer. Now, I know some Chromebooks are in the $300 range, but that's also partially because there's really nothing between that like $300-400 Chromebook and the $1,000 MacBook. Yes, there are a lot of $700-800 Windows laptops, especially if you're willing to look at like last year's model, and if you can look at like even like a refurbished or even just an older MacBook Air, you can get those at $750-800 or whatever. That's all nice, but to have a device at MSRP, like in the Apple Store, that starts at $600, gives you full macOS support, right? But you still mostly use it for like web browsing stuff, whatever. That is what this is. And if it turns out that a lot of people say, look, I want more, then Apple already has 3 easy upgrades next year. They replace the A18 Pro with the A19 Pro. They replace the storage with faster storage because the A19 generation has a better storage controller and more or faster PCIe lanes. And they can give it 12 gigabytes of actually faster RAM. I assume this uses 7500 megatransfers per second memory, so Apple can easily upgrade it to 8533 or even 9600 megatransfers per second. I was wondering if 512 gigabytes MacBook Neo or 13-inch M5 MacBook Air. Wait, that totally depends on the price, because those devices will be vastly different in price. If you can afford the MacBook Air is going to be a better device. That we'll get through all the differences. You guys are super lively in the chat. I totally dig that. But I'll have to get to the story at some point. Hey bro, can we get iPad 12 Gen today? Believe me, I would love that. Like here, Apple Newsroom. Apple, like many of us thought, like my speculation actually was because the name leaked yesterday, right? MacBook Neo. My speculation is maybe we would get two Neo devices today, basically, like an iPad Neo with an A18 chip and a MacBook Neo with an A18 Pro chip. That iPad could be $400 with 128 gigabytes, 8 gigs of RAM, and stuff like that. And then the MacBook Neo could be $600 or $700 at like my speculation was it would be $700, but my speculation also was that it would be similar to what it is, but would have 12 gigs of RAM. So, like usually Apple charges $200 for 8 gigs of extra RAM. So I was kind of right. They just went with a lower end configuration. I'm almost surprised at the price of the 512 gigabyte version, but I guess they do understand that this is a device that is going to be bought by people with a hard cap of what they can afford. What's your point on 18 Pro versus M5 performance comparisons? Well, it is slower. It is one generation behind in single core performance, but then also don't forget M series chips are usually clocked higher than A series chips, right? So it is going to have like 20% more single core performance. And then on top, we do not quite yet know if maybe the M5 MacBook Air might have slower M5, similar to the iPad Pro, because the iPad Pro actually clocks lower than the M5 MacBook Pro with a fan and stuff like that. And I don't just mean for multi-threaded performance. I mean its top speed for single core is 200 megahertz. There's a 200 megahertz difference. In multi-threading performance, expect the M5 to be like basically twice as fast as this. It's a newer generation. It has double the P cores, 50% more E cores. I guess I should be calling the P cores super cores now. That will take a while for me to adjust, to be honest. Guys, we have so many people watching. Please, I don't want to be a bother, but it would mean the world to me if you just left a like, because that helps attract us new people, help us grow the stream. With that, helps us grow the channel. I left the link to the Discord if you also want to join over there. That way you are informed about future streams and can contribute to them with topic suggestions and just discuss with other guys with similar interest those topics. Any updates on iPad 12? I see you guys are really waiting for that Apple TV 4K. Chilling with Tech. Yeah, I mean, we do have Apple TV 4K. I do not like that name because there is like there is no relevant 1080p Apple TV anymore, right? So maybe the next one could support 8K, but it is a little bit of a mess. But no, we did not get a new HomePod Mini. We did not get an A17 Pro or A18 based Apple TV. We did not get the HomePad that's supposed to come at some point, though that one is most likely going to be basically married to the new LLM based Siri. I wonder if there's not much performance difference apart the fact that you're getting more cores than an M5 and better GPU. Well, look, it depends on what you're going to do. Will you feel it really in Safari? Not really. I would argue that starting with the A14 generation of chips and with them with M1, like over 2,400, 2,500 points in Geekbench is just enough for browsing, right? With that, of course, that includes a lot of stuff that you do in the browser, like checking your mail, watching video, right? And especially this is not just faster even than that, but also much more efficient because this is like an N3 based processor. But like if you're working on basic Word documents, if you're working on an Excel sheet that's not too big, like you won't feel a difference. There will be stuff that, especially if you have a lot of tabs open, maybe especially not in Safari, but in something like Chrome, there you will feel the difference of the amount of memory. One thing that I do not know yet if this storage is kind of usable as overflow RAM, like what Apple usually allows on the M series processors. Any updates on iPad 12? Quingnero, I assume Drama Llama, the 900-gram MacBook 12-inch died for the second time today. Wait, I do not know yet how heavy this is. Okay. Okay, okay. I answered about the iPad 12 multiple times. I'll keep you updated. And guys, you can of course tell me when there are breaking news. If Apple decides to launch something today, later on, you can tell me. But right now, uh, it's not. We got the MacBook Neo, and we got a lot of devices yesterday, and then the iPad Air and the iPhone 17e on Monday. So this is still a jam-packed week. Okay, let's actually start with the crux of the story. Say hello to MacBook Neo. Apple's all-new MacBook features a durable aluminum design. So this was an important part of the leaks and rumors that we heard, that it was important for Apple to maintain the durability and the premium look, especially on the outside. Even here, I would actually argue the bezels did not get too big or anything. The corners are still very nice. They're very MacBooky. Like, they're not as rounded as on the iPhone or anything, which could be like visually distracting and interfere even with some software. Like, this device actually looks super clean. And if you're somebody who really hated the notch, well, you're not getting one here. We'll get to specs like the battery. Chilling with Tech wanted to dope MacBook Neo, wait for OLED MacBook Pro, and put the Neo wallpaper. Well, there will be other differences. Like the next MacBook Pro will also not have a notch, but it will have a dynamic island. It will have to decide which one you like more. I use Neovim. A18 Pro keeps head-to-head with M5 iPad in terms of raw power and integrated graphics. No, just not at all. Like you're mistaking the fact that an M5 iPad has to run a much higher resolution, which this MacBook would also have. If you're comparing a game, for example, like Genshin Impact, and how it runs on like an A series iPhone, yes, because the iPhone has fewer pixels, usually turns down some settings. It runs comparably in terms of frame rate to the iPad. But if you were to stretch out the iPhone's image on the size of an iPad panel, now it would look substantially worse than what you get on the iPad. But realistically, except for games, if we are looking at just browsing, shit like that, you really won't feel it. Is this a 12.3 or 13.3 or 12.9? Apple just says it's 13. I mean, I can actually look this one up right away. Displays 13.0 inches on the diagonal, 2408 by 1506, 219 pixels per inch. So this is pretty much the pixel density of the MacBook Air, not the higher one that you get on like the MacBook Pros, which is like 250 something. But contrary to some reports, it actually still supports 500 nits of brightness. Some people said it would only be 400. And it's a 10-bit panel. If anybody of you is following the drama on Twitter and like tech forums about like Samsung misleading people about like the Galaxy S26 displays being 10-bit, but it's actually 8-bit with FRC and screen dithering. This is probably also 8-bit plus FRC rather than a native 10-bit panel. I mean, the fact that it's based on sRGB, that it does not support like P3 white color gamut, or God forbid something like Adobe RGB, which the Studio Display XDR supports. That is very telling that this is not the most advanced panel. But in my opinion, this is probably the same panel basically as on the MacBook Air in many ways, but obviously smaller, therefore lower resolution with thicker bezels. It does not need a notch, and it basically is not validated for P3 color. I'm pretty sure Apple could take maybe like the worst yields of those screens, some that don't reach the necessary color depth and stuff like that, and validate it for this display rather than the MacBook Air. The biggest fail for this company is 13 inches over 12 inches. Wait, did you want it to be way smaller? Because at that point you're looking at iPads, my brother. Like, just with how macOS works, I even feel that sometimes on my 14-inch display, on my 14-inch MacBook Pro, it's built for larger displays. Like, anything really under around 13 inches, it starts to look cramped. Even on 14 inches, I sometimes feel cramped and wonder, maybe Apple can introduce like a 14.8 inch rather than a 14.2, or maybe they can reintroduce a 15 inch or something like that, because the 16 inch is bigger and especially heavier. But no, we are not getting 12 inches. If you want something that small, also thinner and lighter because of that, then you're looking at iPads. You're looking at where the accessory then makes the iPad thicker and heavier again. So it's all all design is compromised with the best company or the worst company. So I myself wouldn't want 12 inches here. Neo weighs the same as the 13-inch Air M5. Yeah, that makes sense. It is just a less dense. It's like designed for different things, right? It has a smaller battery, but it has thicker bezels and things like that. It's probably not designed for the same level of miniaturization when it comes to technology. I hope that it's actually going to cool the A18 Pro pretty well, because sure, it won't have like a vapor chamber to spread its heat, but for the entire aluminum body to be able to distribute that heat, that's probably going to work pretty well. Do you think backlit is the biggest drawback of this MacBook? Yes, in a way, I do think for a lot of people, depending on how you use it. But I also want to point this out, and this is something that Apple does a lot. Whenever Apple does white keyboards, always ask yourself if that keyboard has backlight, right? Because Apple's excuse basically is that if the keyboard is white, it's going to reflect the light of your screen, and then you'll be able to see the keyboard, right? I mean, that's a simple thing. My brain couldn't even comprehend saying it. But yeah, what's funny here, of course, is that this device does need to save money somehow. But you see, Apple does it, for example, on the Magic Keyboard of the iPad Air, right? And of course, they did it all the way back on the Magic Keyboard for, not the Magic Keyboard, I always forget what that accessory is actually called. On the keyboard accessory for the base iPad, right? That also has a white keyboard and does not have backlit, even though it's pretty expensive. Yes, Xcode will run on this. Guys, this is a full-on MacBook. I know some of you are instinctively worried because, Macs are M-series devices. I mean, doesn't the M stand for Mac, right? But don't forget, the A18 chip is very comparable to the M1 in multi-threaded performance. In fact, it's actually closer to like the M2 in multi-threaded performance. I mean, I don't want to belabor the point, like Geekbench, of course, Geekbench iOS. Guys, we have so many people watching. Please leave a like. That will help tremendously. So many people, even competing with yesterday, which I honestly did not expect. Ask me your questions, suggestions. Is the iPad Air M3 faster? Yes. Not in single core performance, because technically M3 aligns more with the A17 generation, though it is clocked higher. So it's going to be close in single core performance, but just notably faster in multi-threaded performance. I mean, we can get through it because iOS, obviously, the Geekbench results share a database with the iPad, right? If we look at the A18 Pro, that's 3,400 points in Geekbench 6. That roughly lines up with the M4, with the M4 being roughly another 80, Jesus Christ, another 8-ish% faster. We reached a very nice 69 live viewers. Thank you, guys. That was a milestone I haven't reached for a while. And then when you look at the M3, which some of you asked, you'll see that the A18 Pro is actually notably faster than the M3 in terms of single-threaded performance. Actually, a full 10% faster, actually even closer to 15% if you look at some other benchmarks. In multi-core performance, that becomes a slightly slightly different story. The A18 Pro here comes somewhere around 8 and 9,000 points. It will vary. I don't know, maybe Apple clocked this A18 Pro like 100 megahertz faster. Yes, you guys, you will be able to code with this. Like, will it be as fast at coding as like an M5 MacBook Air or an M5 Pro MacBook Pro? No, but it does have full support. This is not like a lot of people think that A series chips or mobile form factors are the limit. The reason why the iPad doesn't have Xcode is because iPadOS is a more restrictive operating system, and Apple hasn't bothered to port an iPadOS specific version of Xcode to it. But you can even see from Swift Playgrounds that obviously the system can work with code. There's nothing inherently restrictive. This is full on macOS. It's not Windows 8E or whatever that bullshit was, right? It's not Windows Lite or anything like that. It's not Windows Mobile. It's not even Windows on ARM, because macOS is built for ARM chips, and this is an ARM chip. And yes, if you look again, A18 Pro, right? It's faster in multi-threading than the M1, and it's a tiny bit slower than the M2. And again, if Apple decides to give this maybe slightly higher clock speed in multi-threading, because it can spread all that heat out nicely over the large aluminum chassis, because it has all that, like the battery is really small by MacBook standards, but it's obviously huge versus an iPhone, and it's almost as big as the battery in the 13-inch iPad Pro. You can see that Apple has a lot to work with here. Now, I would assume it's probably still going to be slower, of course, than M2 in multi-threading, but if M1 could handle it, so can A18 Pro. Even in terms of memory bandwidth, there isn't even that big of a difference, because the M1, yes, it has double the memory bus. It's built on a 128-bit memory system, while this is built on a 64-bit bus, but this is using 7,500 megatransfers per second memory, most likely, if the specifications of like the A16 series are anything to go by, while the M1 actually featured 4233 memory, so or 4266 megatransfers per second memory. So this is like 20% less memory bandwidth, but a little bit more multi-threading performance, a lot more single-core performance, and architecturally, like the GPU supports hardware accelerated ray tracing, mesh shading, dynamic caching, and yes, of course, 8 gigs of RAM will limit you, right? So this is not the limitation of the chip. There's no limitation on software, but this is not a device that you should buy for coding. Like at that point, you should be getting an M4 MacBook Air used, right? Because you will get 16 gigabytes of RAM, you will get faster storage, so you can deal with larger projects better in general. If you want to keep some tabs open while you're doing your coding, of course. Do you think the screen is where they're cutting? No, I actually think the screen is one of the things that sticks out to me the most as one of the least cut. The thing where it cuts versus the MacBook Air is in size, so that's, I guess, a literal cut, right? And the other thing is it cuts P3 color gamut. But when you look at its its brightness, it's 500 nits, it has a decent around 220 pixels per inch pixel density, and if you are a notch hater, it actually looks better in that way. It will give you a cleaner look with more symmetric bezels in that regard. $999 for MacBook Air with education discount. This is awful for amount of RAM. No, it's not, because this is not meant for the people. Now, for the people who care about that amount of memory. Like if the M3 MacBook Air was fine with 8 gigs of RAM for the vast majority of people, this will also be fine. This is basically Apple's response to Chromebooks. It is low end, but because Apple's prices are higher than the rest of the industry, it gives you either less for your money relatively if you just look at raw hardware specs, or I guess it gives you the same but for more money, depending on your perspective. 8 gigs of RAM on Neo will force Apple to keep macOS usable on 8 gigs MacBooks. Might be good for M1, M2, M3 users. That is correct. It's actually going to do a lot of what like the RTX 5060 and stuff like that are going to do for like older GPUs that are also limited to 8 gigs of RAM. The GPU is cut. Yeah, it is a 5-core GPU rather than a 6-core GPU. Guys, let me... we have so many people watching. Thank you so much. Please like the video. Please subscribe if you're enjoying this. I left the link to our Discord in the beginning of the chat if you want to consider joining over there. But also beyond all that, of course, if you want to support me directly, make your next chat in the live chat a super chat, or consider becoming a channel member right here on YouTube. Okay, let's actually start with how Apple frames it all. That way we can go through the individual spec points and contrast it to Apple's marketing, right? Which this one is going to be funny. Apple today unveiled MacBook Neo, an all-new laptop. By the way, a little bit of Apple history nerdiness. MacBook Neo, this is now the second product under Tim Cook that Apple basically calls new, right in the name. Do you remember the third generation iPad, the first Retina display iPad, which under Tim Cook they named what? The new iPad, right? And that's something that apparently Tim Cook likes, but now they basically went with a Latin way of saying it. They call it a breakthrough price. But again, this is not a breakthrough price that's just Apple saying, look, we don't like 30-40% profit margins on hardware anymore. This price is 100% based on cuts and maybe a tiny willingness to embrace lower margins. This device is not meant in any way to cannibalize the MacBook Air, even though it's close to half the price. In my opinion, this device is 100% meant to expand Apple's market. Maybe in some case it would cannibalize, and this is actually something that's good for Apple, it could cannibalize a used or older MacBook Air purchase, because somebody might go into the store and see, oh, there's a $600 new MacBook, like literally new in the name in a way, right? Let me buy that rather than go on Amazon and look for the lowest price, or go on eBay and find something used, even though that might be a better product ultimately. But yes, this price is similar to the iPhone 17e. The iPhone 17e is not an iPhone 17 minus $200. The iPhone 17e is an iPhone 13 plus some newer stuff at a price that is obviously not going to be what the iPhone 17 can demand. I would argue even the iPhone 17e should probably be another $100 less expensive. You can argue the same thing about this device. But for the iPhone, you will be able to get it for cheaper, right? On the iPhone, there are carrier discounts, of course. There is some bundle pricing. In China, Apple offers like discounts even directly. For the MacBook, there will be discounts very quickly on sites like Amazon. And of course, there's Apple's education prices. And in a few months, you will even be able to get this device refurbished from Apple Store, right? Somebody buys it, it ends up having some form of defect. Apple hands the user a new MacBook Neo, takes in this one, repairs it in a way, and then you get a refurbished one, probably even with like a swapped battery, still get the full warranty afterwards and stuff like that, right? But you get to save $100, $120, something around it. This is not meant to be Apple makes a product with suddenly half the profit margin. Apple has not gotten new leadership. They have not gotten a new board of directors. Their stock hasn't crashed, forcing them to try to desperately grow their market at any price, right? Just letting you know. And exactly what I said, in terms of growing the market, this is meant to make it even more accessible to millions of people around the world. It starts with a beautiful Apple design, so you can see this is a very recognizable product. I cannot play the videos, obviously, but you can see it has these soft, rounded shapes. It has a very like friendly look. It's probably gonna more difficult like for kids because they might like crash it against something, whatever, right? It has these colors, one very neutral one, and then three much more playful ones. There have been some other colors that were rumored, like one noticeable one was green. That's apparently not happening. So I know some of you are really big fans of green, but that's not happening. People are concerned with the RAM as if RAM swap does. That's actually interesting because I am not sure if this supports RAM swap. If you remember, for example, the 64 gigabytes M1 iPad Air, right? That one did not support storage for RAM swap. Then later generations that had 128 gigabytes and stuff like that, those of course featured it. Now or even with the M1 iPad Air, if you had the version with more storage, you could do it. My question is there any kind of hardware limitation on A-series processors when it comes to RAM swap availability? Because I cannot imagine why there would be, to be quite honest, but this is one thing I might encourage you to maybe look at, like future Max Tech videos. And hey, join the channel, right? Subscribe, hit the notification bell, because I will be watching those Max Tech videos together with you. I will be reacting to reviews, benchmarks, and stuff like that. I'll be posting stuff on that, like that on Discord. Now, I'm not a big reviewer myself, and I review what I buy for myself, but I will drink in as much external information and try to convey it to you in an understandable way. Only the 256 has Touch ID. Yeah, we're gonna get to the exact differentiations, and probably the best choice if you can get education discount is to get the 512 gigabyte version. I would be shocked if that one didn't have RAM swap and stuff like that. It has blush, indigo, silver, and a fresh new citrus. Its stunning 13-inch liquid retina display brings website, photos, videos, and apps to life with high resolution and brightness. So again, no cutting of the 500 nits capabilities on the MacBook Air. Obviously, that pales in comparison to like the 1000 nits SDR brightness. It's using why it only has 16 hours of battery, because it has a 36 watt-hour battery. So this is actually smaller than the battery inside the 13-inch iPad Pro. This is guys, I have to say that time and time again, this is a cheaper product. It's in some ways literally a MacBook Air, but with a similarly sized, similarly capable screen, a similarly beautiful body, right? But much of it is cut in half. The chip multi-threaded, cut in half. The RAM amount, cut in half. The storage amount, cut in half. The battery, cut by about a third, right? And all of that will sum up, of course, for Apple to make it cheaper in the process to build, but then also downwards down the line for you, cheaper to buy. I know a lot of you are asking about the 12th gen iPad. It didn't launch. So it might launch by the end of the year together with a redesigned iPad mini, right? There's an iPad mini in the works that's going to have OLED, that's going to have a redesigned chassis, that's going to have, well, at least slightly, but that chassis will be water resistant, maybe waterproof, who knows? And with that, it might have a brand new speaker system that actually uses piezo electricity to not have speaker grills and therefore make it more waterproof. So I don't know if the iPad might have more changes than the A18. I don't know. There might be some craziness. If Apple is going absolutely bananas, Apple might show us something tomorrow. They might make it a 4-day week event, right? They might show us an iPad Neo tomorrow, for all I know. But no, it hasn't happened. Remember, guys, wait for the reviewers to review the product. Yes, of course. So 1 billion colors. Now 1 billion colors is a 10-bit panel or an 8-bit panel with FRC or screen dithering. That is obviously a discussion right now that's being held about the Galaxy S26 family, because Samsung promised a 10-bit panel, but then on their website they actually talked it only about supporting 16 million colors. Then they said yes, but it does have FRC, so technically it kind of works like a 10-bit panel. I would be shocked if this is actually a 10-bit panel. This is most likely an 8-bit panel with FRC, similar to my own MacBook Pro. I actually tried it. I tried some 10-bit material. It did not have color banding on my screen, so 8-bit plus FRC absolutely works. New MacBook Air M1 for $349. Well, a MacBook Air at half of this price will be better, right? Like a better value, I mean. This will be better in some ways. Like it has significantly more single core performance. It does have a newer Wi-Fi standard. It has Wi-Fi 6E. It does not, unfortunately, have Wi-Fi 7E like the MacBook Air and stuff like that, but it's still better. It's going to be better than the Wi-Fi 6 M1 MacBook Air. Yeah, and I would also assume that just from the single core performance alone, even with the same amount of base RAM of 8 gigabytes, I would assume that this gets at least 1 extra year of software support, right? I could see that happening. So powered by A18 Pro. Now again, some of you have already pointed it out. This is a binned A18 Pro in terms of its GPU. It has 1 GPU core disabled. A18 Pro goes up to 6 GPU cores on the iPhone 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max. This is a 5-core GPU. So this does not compete with iPad Pro or even iPad Air in terms of graphics performance, does not compete with the MacBook Air. Obviously, the A18 generation is more comparable to the M4 family, so it does not have newer GPU stuff like neural accelerators. So if you want to use this for like local LLMs, first of all, 8 gigs of RAM will be a very hard limit for that. But beyond all that, of course, it's also then going to be limited by the much slower AI processing. MacBook Neo can fly through everyday tasks from browsing the web. Guys, this is a Chromebook competitor. Streaming content, Chromebook competitor, tablet competitor, editing photos, basic netbook tablet competitor, exploring creative hobbies, cheaper MacBook used, like some of you have pointed out, like an old M1 or M2 MacBook Air, right? You can still edit photos. You can still edit older videos. This has all the necessary encoders and decoders for stuff like that. Guys, you can ask about the iPad 12th generation as much as you like. It did not launch. And All-Time Tech 12, if you believe that this is the ugliest Mac ever, like you just like this, I actually think it looks super clean. Like, and that's what I've seen from many people here. I can deal with no MagSafe and just with 8 gigs of RAM, but I cannot deal with the lack of a backlit keyboard. I canceled my pre-order. There was no pre-order, my buddy. Or did you pre-order it the very second? Who does that before reading the tech specs? You have to be more careful, man. You can be tricked in general when it comes to that. Like, I always recommend, like, even if you are not an enthusiast, even if you don't understand the tech specs that much, go to the tech specs of any given product and try to see maybe just something really springs out to you as being bad, right? Maybe you recognize one spec that you know is really important to you. So yeah, just be careful. This channel is very much meant to maximize your enjoyment of your device. It's not making you, it's not pushing you to buy something new, spend your money, or get the most expensive thing. I always recommend, guys, you look at just Amazon Amazon. Amazon often has like 10-15% discounts. Look at the refurbished market, especially from Apple directly. Look at the used market. If you find somebody who's like a really good seller, like with a good score and like eBay or Facebook Marketplace, right? Consider asking a family member or a friend if maybe their product is older and they might want to sell it while your money then goes into them buying something new, right? If you're in, like, that happens a lot to me with my family. Look, I give them my tech for free, sure, but if a friend asked me, I would still offer them a decent price. I wouldn't be exploitative. But like with family members, my mom gets my older iPhones, right? And that encourages me to upgrade a little bit more often. My grandma then gets the iPhone that my mom used. And that way, I am actually super familiar with the devices that they have. I can give them nice quality of life tech advice. They can even take some of my older cases if they want to. Yeah, so don't get tricked. This is not a channel that's going to encourage you to overspend here. What surprised you most about the MacBook Neo? I think what surprises me is that the screen is actually decent. There have been some stupid rumors that I did not like. Some people were pointing to it having like a 12.9-inch screen, the same form factor as the iPad, right? Which, while that would be nice for pixel density, because the iPads actually have higher pixel density than the Macs at around 260, it would be a really bad form factor for macOS. macOS is really built for 16 by 9, 16 by 10, maybe closer to like 3 by 2. But once we really get to that iPad standard 4 by 3, that would have been really bad. I also thought it would be 400 nits, but this is actually 500 nits. So yeah, there have been a lot of good things here. It would be hilarious if companies started using this in bulk. Well, with education prices, I could actually see like a well-positioned school financially actually adopt this over like a more premium Chromebook. Like there are a lot of schools in the US and Canada, less so here in Europe, who really like push Chromebooks, but very rarely do they like push like the cheapest Chromebooks, which I would actually believe is like, probably if you buy Chromebooks, you probably want them to be as cheap as possible in a way. Some of you are saying no backlit is almost a deal breaker. Yeah, if you really care about all the quality of life stuff, like we talk about backlit keyboard, but this also doesn't have a 3D touch, force touch trackpad. It probably has a diving board trackpad. It's just about multi-touch. No 3D touch, no force touch, however you want to call it, right? So this is a cheaper product, guys. This is $500 less expensive than the MacBook Air. How do you think Apple achieved that without completely cratering their margins? Like even like the 1080p FaceTime camera, it's not 12 megapixel like what you get on your MacBooks. It seems like they took a whole iPad apart and made a use of parts they already had. I am muting anybody who is like just non-stop like spamming 12th generation iPads. I've told you guys time and time again, we did not get the 12th generation iPad. KSP Wonder saying, yeah, you have a lot of competition today. I did not expect today's viewership to be almost twice the size of yesterday's, at least 50% higher, over 100 people watching live. This is, I believe, my second highest live day in 2 years. Is this better than M1 Air? And I think this is a good question, actually. Is it better than M1 or even M2 MacBook Air? And I would argue it's a better product, but it is probably worse value than if you can get those devices at around $400. That would be kind of my balance in the answer, because you will feel that extra single core performance that's M4 level, right? While those are obviously M1 and M2. You can use AI capabilities across apps, though this device is going to be much more suited for AI use cases in the cloud. It's 50% faster for everyday tasks like web browsing, up to 3 times faster when running on-device AI workloads like applying advanced effect to photos, compared to the best-selling PC with the latest shipping Intel Core Ultra 5. So obviously we have transitioned from the I naming. I would like to know which chip it is, but they do not actually give us here something. Um, 16 hours of battery life. So again, this is a very efficient chip, a small chip, but this is a chip that with a 36 watt hour battery, or like what is it, 35.8 or something like that, battery. 36.5, okay, a 36 watt hour battery. It has a 1.5 meter cable. It has a 20 watt USB-C power adapter. So, though I would be surprised if it cannot charge faster than 20 watts. I mean, the iPad can now charge at 60 watts. The MacBook Air obviously can charge at 70 watts. The iPhone itself can charge at 37 watts, at least the Pro versions. And this has much more area to dissipate that heat. But we'll get to the exact spec points. Sorry if you have answered this question already. That's fine. By the way, guys, I have no problem with re-answering questions. You can force me to read pretty much anything that's decent with a super chat, but just in general, I'm also happy to answer questions even if they've already been asked. I'm not a freaking asshole. I don't believe I am entitled to like you watching from second one. The only thing that I will mute, well, I will block if you are a freaking asshole, right? And I will mute if you are spamming, right? That's what I will do. Everything else is absolutely fine. I appreciate each and every one of you being here. I definitely did not expect to have this many viewers today, so thank you to anyone joining. So, sorry if you've answered this question already. Is it better to go with M4 MacBook Air or MacBook Neo? M4 MacBook Air beats this in every way. It has a larger screen. It has a larger battery. Its chip is faster across the board because it shares all the same architectures across the CPU and GPU, but it just has more cores. It has Thunderbolt rather than regular USB-C. It has a high impedance headphone jack as far as I know. We can also do some more detailed comparisons, right? It has a higher quality camera. It has a Force Touch trackpad. It has a backlit keyboard. So yes, if you can get the M4 MacBook Air for $800 and you can spread your budget, that's all something that I always bring up with the iPhone 17e, right? Some people, like I unapologetically say that the iPhone 17 is better value. It's 1/3 more expensive, but I actually think it's about a 40-50% better product just from the ProMotion alone. Double the cameras, the better front-facing camera, in my opinion, is a game changer. I've loved taking selfies on my iPhone 17 Pro this generation, which I usually don't do. If you can get the M4 MacBook Air at $800 and you can spread your budget, it's a better purchase across the board. I was waiting for 16 gigs of RAM. Can it sustain the newer macOS requirements? Has it some cut-down version? This is full macOS, but you will feel it, right? Like macOS still runs perfectly fine on 8 GB devices, right? Like look at the M1 MacBook Air, look at the M2 MacBook Air and things like that. Look at the M3 MacBook Air and even the MacBook Pros, right? Don't forget, it took us until the M4 generation to get 16 gigabytes as the new standard for devices, at least that started around $1,000. This is obviously substantially less than $1,000, and that's why Apple is cutting the RAM. My personal wish for this device was for it to get the A19 Pro chip, because A19 Pro would have meant 2 improvements that I think will make this device notably slower in some scenarios than even an M3 MacBook Air. And A19 Pro obviously gives you an even newer architecture for CPU, GPU, AI acceleration. But A19 Pro also comes with 12 gigabytes of memory, also faster memory. That memory would actually equalize the bandwidth between an M1, which has double the memory bus, but much slower memory. And it has more PCIe lanes for faster storage, or it has faster PCIe lanes. We don't know the actual spec breakdown on that. So I think the next year's MacBook Neo will be unapologetically much better just from a chip swap. Because with that chip swap will also come memory. I don't want to say memory swap because memory swap is a feature, but it will come with more memory, faster memory, and faster storage. Whoever said Neo 2 with 16 gigabytes, I think it will be 12 gigabytes. Carlo Ferguson saying, have a good day. I hope you also do. What about smoothness? Is it future proof? That's a silly question. Like, is it going to be future proof for the base tasks that are being advertised here, especially stuff like web browsing, video streaming, and things like that? Yes. Is this going to be an Xcode machine that you will be able to keep using for years, even as your Xcode use cases evolve and you maybe start to turn into an AI developer or whatever? No. So, like, two sides of a coin, right? I check if you're a student, you get $100 off. Thank you, guys. Help each other out like that. Let others know that there are ways to get it cheaper and stuff like that. Buying a secondhand M1 Air is a bit risky. Yes, but there are refurbished models that will still be cheaper than this. In fact, I believe that Walmart had $600 M1 MacBook Airs, like just a regular MacBook Air, not refurbished, not anything, just discounted, just cheaper. Any update about iPad 12? Well, I mean, we can check it again, right? I guess I can do it like every half hour. But no, there's no 12th generation iPad. I know some of you are, a surprising amount, are looking forward to that, which is cool. Like, I love getting that kind of like understanding of what you want. I disagree with anybody saying 8 gigabytes RAM is barely present proof. I have 8 gigabytes of RAM in my iPad Pro. I use it for all the exact tasks that Apple describes here. Photo editing, browsing, streaming content. I even do some light video editing on it occasionally. All my thumbnails I make either on my iPhone or my iPad. Like, I even use locally AI with 8 gigs of RAM pretty fine. I think it should be fine. So 16 hours of battery life. So this is also something where it's worse than a MacBook Air. And I believe this is for video, and for web surfing, it's 11 hours. So it's more comparable to like this mythical 10-hour of battery life that the iPads have had for years. A 1080p FaceTime HD camera. Again, a worse camera, dual microphones, dual speakers, and these are side firing, so we'll have to see how that affects it. I'm very happy, though, that they are side firing rather than down firing, because that could have been a real disaster. If you look at the side here of the device, right? These are the speakers, which is actually pretty cool because it brings them those speakers pretty close to you, and it's going to give them a nice stereo separation. But is it going to be as good as like the quad speaker system on the iPad Pro, or of course once you go up the MacBook line on the MacBook Air? Is it going to be anywhere near as good as like the six speaker system on the 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pro? No, of course not. But I'm very happy at the very least that this is still a proper stereo system, and it's actually placed way better than many laptops of its price range, because on many Windows laptops, they would have placed it right here, right around that curvature, and it would have become a downwards facing speaker, which they usually sound like trash because they have to bounce off the table. That obviously will then also depend on the material of the table. So yeah, side speakers is a cool idea. It's definitely, you can see it's cheaper. It's not like built under the keyboard or anything like that. It's definitely not built next to the keyboard, and therefore up firing, but it is better than what I actually feared. Can you get a MacBook Air M2 for around $600? No, you're not asking, you're saying yes, you can. Rocking the M2 MacBook Pro with 8 gigabytes, also no RAM upgrade option for the Neo? No, with the 512 gigabyte version, you get 512 gigabytes and you get Touch ID. I have to see if there are any other uplifts that I have mentioned. M2 Air is not going to be much better, guys. especially the 256 gig version. That is probably I actually suspect this one is going to have storage speed similar to the gimped M2 MacBook Air version. But I also suspect, but don't forget, there's going to be a very meaningful difference in single core performance. So no, the M2 MacBook Air is not automatically a lot better. I also believe the M2 MacBook Air, as far as I know, still didn't have Wi-Fi 6E. This does have Wi-Fi 6E. So it's going to be a balance. Yeah. I would probably recommend actually going to the store and checking out the Neo and seeing if you feel any differences. Because to everyone, different stuff is differently important, right? Some people really care about the speakers. Some people really care, like I really care about like the non-diving board trackpads, those force touch trackpads. The 8 GB MacBook Air, well, yes, M2 MacBook Airs come with 16 GB configurations, but that was not the standard. When I comment on the standard, on the lowest end version. When it comes to exact price comparisons, don't forget, guys, I cannot comment on all of them because I do not see what you are seeing. And obviously, it will depend on the country you're in, on the used market around you, on the refurbished market, stuff like that. I cannot obviously control for all those variables. It features Apple's renowned Magic Keyboard for comfortable and precise typing, a large multi-touch trackpad, so not force touch, with support for intuitive gestures, enabling smooth and precise control. You see no depth sensing or pressure sensing. Completing the MacBook Neo experience is macOS Tahoe, all that stuff. And yes, $499 is the education pricing, which I actually think is what this device is mostly aimed at. I wouldn't even be surprised if, like, in bulk discounts, Apple might even offer it for like $480, $460 or something like that. If a school buys like 1,000 of these or something like that, or at least 200 or something like that. Yeah, and it becomes pre-orderable today and starts shipping next Wednesday, March 11th. This is the same time frame as for everything else that Apple has announced this week. So this is why the Apple Store website was down today. Estus, what do you think about the jack port place? What do you mean? That it's closer here. I actually think that's great because that's something that I notice a lot while I use it. Now, granted, I'm an idiot. I should be sticking my headphone jack here with my microphone, right? But for some reason, I just out of habit, I always stick it in my MacBook, and I always would like it to actually be further in the product. I actually think this is a very sensible decision for Apple to make because this brings it closer. So if you have a pair of headphones, which are usually like, what, under 1 meters in length, yeah, or maybe at most 1.5 meters, and if you don't want to sit too close to your MacBook, especially if maybe you're watching with two people, so one has like your headphone in one ear, the other in the other, I actually think this is very sensible. So, John Turnus, again, I've commented it multiple times yesterday, probably Apple's future CEO, currently Apple's Senior Vice President of Hardware Engineering, saying we're incredibly excited to introduce MacBook Neo, which delivers the magic of the Mac at a breakthrough price, built from the ground up to be more affordable. So, guys, take that from John Turnus, don't take it from me. This was built with cuts to make it cheaper. It's not just a MacBook Air that's magically cheaper because it's ancient at this point. MacBook Neo is a laptop only Apple could create. Yeah, I guess 8 gigs of RAM, it's $600 is still. The problem is I say that, right? But it's not actually true because not too long ago, Dell was offering like 8 gigabytes laptops at like $800 or $900. like even shortly after the M4 came out and standardized 16 gigabytes on Apple MacBooks, there was still like some garbage, at least like $700 Dell with like 8 gigabytes. So it's not that unique. So if there's no Touch ID in the Mac, in the base version, there's no quick unlock. Well, only with Apple Watch, I guess, right? Which, yes, I'm not saying you should buy an Apple Watch to quickly unlock your MacBook Neo, but yes. And we have seen Apple make that compromise already. In a way, this upgrade from 256 gigabytes to 512, first of all, it's half the price Apple usually asks for. And it gives you Touch ID. So the price per gigabyte that you're paying is actually like substantially less than Apple usually tends to ask for such an upgrade. You can get the base iPad and the Neo for the same price as the MacBook Air. Yes, that's part of the story, right? Maybe your kid really still wants to draw on an iPad, right? Maybe you want an iPad in the family to keep around. And now your money is being stretched rather thin, right? You have maybe an overall budget of around $1,000. With education discount, you can get the 512 gigabyte version at $600 or the 256 gigabyte version now at $500. With the iPad, you can get it close to $300. And because you probably just want also more devices in your life, especially if you have multiple kids, that absolutely is a sensible choice. Apple is lost. I mean, the MacBook was reserved for M series. That's complete bullshit. Like that has always been such a bullshit talking point. It's like saying, oh, A-series chips are for iPhones and for iPad. This is way cheaper. Look, guys, if this were even a $900 product, right, which would be 50% more than it is right now, then yes, I would be saying, wait, why does it, like, I would even complain if it had an A20 chip in it, right? Because I would be like, wait, but like Thunderbolt is now missing and everything, right? Like, why would you do that? This is a way cheaper product. I do not understand why people don't understand that. Like, there is money obviously that goes into the chassis, the keyboard, the trackpad, the speaker system, and everything that makes this more expensive to make in a way than just an iPad with an A-series chip. Just as there is like a $350 iPad with an A-series chip, an older A-series chip right now, by the way, with less memory, and even when it gets the A18, that's still not going to be the A18 Pro, and it's definitely not going to give you more than 8 gigs of RAM. This is where the difference is. It's basically a base iPad, but with a larger screen. So that's something Apple usually charges at least $100 extra for. On the iPad Air, they actually charge $200 to go from 11 inches to 13 inches, right? It has integrated keyboard and trackpad. That's something Apple charges anywhere from $150 to $300 for, right? That's what your price difference is. I genuinely wish for Apple to have one micro SD card slot in cheaper Macs. Yeah, I guess that's also partially why they do not want that. I actually get it. Now, that storage in the micro SD card will be way slower than even the storage in the cheapest MacBook. But I do understand the value idea here. MacBook Neo does not have an LED next to the camera. When the camera is on, it's on the system, so on the right corner of the Mac. That's actually an interesting thing. I never like the LED indicator, so look, I understand it's a very visible part of the privacy-focused UI, but I just never liked how it looks. Some call it the product incredible here in the chat. I feel like Apple can get away with 8 gigabytes because macOS relatively more optimized than Windows. That's putting it mildly. It's not BS, they would bin the M series. That's not what binning is. Like, you guys also don't understand what binning is, unfortunately. Like, and I don't mean everyone, right? Binning does not make the chip actually cheaper to produce. Binning reduces chip waste, which helps you with overall chip utilization rate, which then helps you with money. There is no N5 node, there is no N3 node, and this is an N3 E-based processor with yields so bad that you would yield down, which essentially would be an M4 processor, to an A18 style chip, because it would mean eliminating 2 P cores, 2 E cores, and like half the GPU cores. That's just not what binning is. It's for students and study people to block and surf the web, not for hardcore techies. Thank you, John Caraveo. And it's also just pretty. Like there's going to be a lot of people who just look at it and say it's cute, and they will buy it potentially over like a MacBook Air. Like, I'm not saying it's the best value product ever, but I feel like some people are pretending like we're discussing a completely different company here, right? Like, and like we are not inside the craziest Mac and RAM and storage Armageddon because of the AI booms shit and stuff like that. Yeah, and the screen is Retina, which, by the way, a lot of products in this at this price range will be like 1080p, and they will have like a super bad, like somewhat matte finish, but it's not actually that anti-reflective. It's just grainy and looks like garbage. There'll be like noticeable color banding because those display will be 8-bit with without FRC. They won't even often cover the entire sRGB standard. Right? So, like, I understand some people will say, but you can get the M4 MacBook Air at $750. Not even in every market, guys. Yeah, Triple Ray saying, that's how I feel. It's pretty anti-wanted. That's something that so many people misunderstand. Says so much about our, I've said it in the beginning of the stream. I do not encourage you guys to overspend or to spend on something completely like out of a lack of self-control or whatever. I understand money is precious and you need to be careful with it. You need to extract as much value out of it. But part of that is going to be your enjoyment from pretty colors, the device being softer to the touch and things like that. Like, believe me, if you're just surfing the web, I wouldn't feel the difference on it even versus my M1 Max MacBook Pro right now, which is like, what, 7 times the price. It's worth this to switch from M1. Like, I mean, it's going to be better, but it's such a small upgrade. It's basically going to be like a side grade. Like, if you are upgrading from M1, especially if you are selling your M1 in the process, just get like, at that point, really get what a lot of people in the chat cannot stop mentioning, get like a refurbished or discounted M4 MacBook Air. Can display Resident Evil 9. Riley, you're a freaking asshole, but I'm not banning you. With the Apple, this is something that I've discussed yesterday. My hope was that Apple might actually surprise us with a shadow drop of Resident Evil Requiem on macOS and iPadOS, but alas, they did not. Okay, yeah, a lot of this is just basic recapping. Apple is placing the long game, building the best hardware and software instead of jamming useless AI features. I agree with that. And also, like, one thing that I'm not sure if this device will support Apple. I mean, the 8 gigabytes M1 support Apple Intelligence, but I'm not sure once the models start growing in size and there will be more of them, if there will be some limitations here. What's the best color for the Air models? In my opinion, it's midnight, but I really dig the sky blue. Where is it? That's the MacBook, MacBook Air. Guys, we've been streaming for an hour and 20 minutes almost. Please, if you're enjoying this, you want to see more of this, subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it out with anybody who think might enjoy it. Consider supporting me directly by making your a message a super chat or a super sticker, or consider becoming a channel member right here on YouTube. There are different tiers at which you can subscribe to. Hit the notification bell, that way you know when I'm going live next, so you can see my follow-up coverage, and consider joining the Discord right at the beginning of the live chat. I left the link, but you can also find it in the links right under the channel banner. Starlight from MacBook Air look nice, even silver. Oh, I never loved Starlight, to be honest. Look, this sky blue looks so freaking clean. Like, it almost disappears, right? Depending on your perspective, but Silver is a bit boring. Starlight always didn't look champagne enough for me. I wanted more golden, to be honest, to like it. I don't want to say it's piss colored a little bit, but that sometimes, like, if it comes off super subtle in certain lights. But yeah, for me it would be midnight. It absolutely would be midnight. Does it still look premium months later though? Yeah. Aluminum is anodized, so this is not some cheap color on top. This is not something that will even expensive color on top, like what happened with Apple's stainless steel and titanium models. Well, especially the titanium models. Stainless steel was still nicely anodized. But this is not going to be something that wears off. So MacBooks are notorious for being very durable and long lasting with their aluminum frames. The color by itself does not age at all. Obviously you can scuff it or everything, but you can do that with everything else too. I'm wondering if the keyboard is full size. Yes, it is. The keyboard is full size. That's why you can actually see, even from the little bit of here, right? The keyboard goes exactly from left to right. While if we actually look a little bit at the MacBook Air, you can see that there's a little bit of space here. Even the trackpad, you will see, is actually very nicely sized. It's just not a Force Touch keyboard and trackpad, unfortunately. Okay, let's see. Beautiful and durable aluminum design. We can skip to the main points here. 2.7 pounds. It's the same weight as the MacBook Air. So this is just a device that's built with less miniaturization in mind. I've already said it in the beginning. I hope it's going to be really good for the cooling of the A18 Pro chip, because Apple clearly didn't cut the amount of aluminum. I almost expected them to just use much thinner aluminum, right? And combined with a smaller battery and everything, I really expected this to be more like a 2-pound product. But it is going to be a very, like, not hefty in terms of actually heavy, but it is going to have a nice density to it all. It has blush, indigo, silver, and citrus. Yeah, very pretty colors: silver, blush, citrus, and indigo. I don't know why I was like, wait, which one is blush? Like, that's not blush. That's not blush. Is this blush? I don't know why my brain just malfunctioned. Like, yeah, I guess when you blush, you turn a shade of pink. So, and I think especially like the colorful versions are going to be super popular. Like, if you buy this as the first laptop for your kid, right? And it actually lines up with the favorite color. Like, I mean, the standard here would be blue for boys, pink for girls, right? Yellow, I guess, for the non-binary. One thing I always point out, this is a very inclusive channel. We do not discriminate. We had some trans bashing early on when we had some people who hated, we all hated here on Linus Tech Tips, but some people specifically attract like trans individuals at LTT. We do not do that. We make fun, light-hearted jokes, so I hope everybody feels welcome in the community over here. But yes, if you want a super neutral color, regardless of sex or gender or whatever else, you get a very nice, very standard silver. When I blush, I get a little darker. Do you turn like anime blush, right? Like with red stripes on your cheeks? Is that what happens? I love the white keyboard. This is something that I've seen people, like, I would even like it, and I know some people would absolutely hate it, if this had white bezels, right? Like, I know people hate those on the iMac, but I really like them. I think they make they create a nice contrast between the screen and everything, and I think they flow nicer into a bright room overall. Which obviously, yes, this won't flow into the room because this is a standalone mobile product. But I do miss white bezels, so I'm very happy that at least there are still white keyboards. Anime blush, yeah. Some people found that funny. That makes me happy. I love making you people laugh. Stunning 13-inch liquid retina display. So some people ask me what am I most surprised by about this product. It's this screen. And actually when because we have the MacBook Air open here, right? So if we compare it MacBook 3 M5, let's compare it with the MacBook Neo, right? And hell with it, compare it with the MacBook Pro, right? We do not have a huge screen difference, 13 inches with 13.6. That explains the thicker bezels, but that also explains, with the bezels being thicker, the notch being able to go away. Obviously, we have all of that difference. 16 hours of battery life, actually not that much worse than the MacBook Air. I actually thought the MacBook Air was closer to 20 hours. I guess I was thinking then of the 15-inch, right? Oh no, that's also rated. Huh, that's interesting, actually. But for the screen, right, it's you can see that this is basically the exact screen, but smaller. It's 500 nits of brightness. Now it's rated for sRGB, and True Tone is based on ambient color sensor. So that sensor is just missing. Which, does it have automatic brightness adjustment would be my question. Does it have a sensor for that, or is that also removed? It's sometimes something Apple likes to do. Height, yeah, it's thicker, but it's less wide and it's less tall. Okay, yeah, it makes sense. So basically this is a device firmly built to be like a bit heftier, and actually that gives the MacBook Air a justification to call itself the MacBook Air next to the MacBook Neo. Triple Ray saying, love your vibes. I'm very happy to hear that. I've actually grown a lot in the beginning when I used to be more of a drama channel, when I covered like the LTT versus Gamers Nexus stuff. And I ended up attracting a lot of people that I didn't vibe too well with, so I purged a lot of that community. That's why you can see that I actually have a pretty good number of subscribers, even though it's been pretty stagnant for a while, I will admit that. But my live viewership isn't always high. Sometimes it's just like 5, 10 people, 15 people, right? So I really appreciate everyone who earnestly comes into the community, is fun to engage with, loves technology. And by loving technology, I do really mean loving overall technology. I do not ask you to love every single product, excuse every decision that Apple makes, or hate everything from the competition. That's not what this channel is about at all. Strive57X with a $5 super chat. Hey, the first super chat of today. Probably the last, but I still appreciate it. Saying, why do you think the iPad couldn't fully serve the potential users of the MacBook Neo? It is the OS limitation. Because when you look at the iPad Air, right, realistically, it has a better chip right now. The M4 is the same generation of processor when it comes to CPU cores, GPU cores. It will have double the memory bandwidth because it has a 128-bit memory bus. So it has all those advantages, but it's really iPad. Now, you can also argue it's the 11-inch screen if you go with the smaller version, and then the 13-inch is actually substantially more expensive. That's all true, but fundamentally, yes, it is the OS, and it is a choice from Apple. You guys probably remember, right, like that famous keynote moment, like, are we merging iPad OS and Mac OS, right? Asked by Craig Federighi, and there was like a big fat no, like dropping on the keynote as like an effect. That's the limitation. That's also something that's at least partially good. I'm not like Drew from Tailosive Tech. I do see a sense in the iPad existing and having a distinct user interface from the Mac. I do want Apple to add more features to iPadOS. For example, stuff like streaming would really be hard for me on my iPad because it does not have something like, it could have something like OBS, but it would be useless because it wouldn't have all the system permissions necessary. Obviously, it wouldn't have all the customization options, like for example, my third-party display tool that allows me to turn my Mac into a 16 by 9-inch display, which allows me to much better stream, right? If you actually look at my old streams, I actually used the full like over 16 by 10 thing, but then I ended up zooming into a 16 by 9 a portion of the screen with OBS. On the iPad, I wouldn't be able to do any of that. I would have to stream like for 4K, or would just have to cut into a 16:9 portion of the screen. Is MacBook Neo a good upgrade for MacBook Air 1? I've already answered that question. I do not think it is. I like, it's just like, consider it like Apple, like, consider all the inflation since the M1 MacBook Air, right? And now consider that this product is actually like what, 40% less than the base price of the MacBook Air, with the same amount of RAM and storage, which are now particularly hardest hit by inflation, specifically like because of the AI boom. This device is not meant to be an upgrade. It's part of a different pricing structure, right? That's something that Apple often does. Some features trickle down, like when it comes to stuff like ergonomics, right? Like, it trickles down from the top to downwards, right? But sometimes it clearly doesn't, right? Like, how many years did it take for the iPhone, from the iPhone 13 Pro down to the iPhone 17, for ProMotion to trickle from $1,000 price point to a $800 price point. Now consider the same thing for the iPad. We've had promotion on the iPad since 2017, actually since the A10X iPad Pro. But has it yet trickled down to even the iPad Air? No. So Apple clearly likes cutting some features. Tribore saying OBS is the only reason I can't get rid of my MacBook. Great point. And to who was asking me, sorry, I do not sometimes try to pronounce really complicated names because I do not want to butcher them and sound disrespectful, but saying M5 MacBook Pro it is. Well, if you can stretch your budget, because that's an additional $500 or $400 for the same amount of storage, 512 gigabytes, that's great. That's what I always tell. Like, buy something about as good as you can reasonably afford, and then keep it for as long as possible. That's something that I took from Rene Ritchie, who was one of my inspirations to do YouTube on the site as well. If you guys don't know, I'm training to be a dermatologist, so I'm in the medical field. I do not do this for a living or whatever, but I do try to find some time. I do even take some time off from work so I can have a little bit more time to stream. So that's why I ask for stuff like super chats or channel memberships. It's not that I'm super greedy. I understand that my stream obviously doesn't cost too much to maintain or anything, but it is necessary for me to keep balancing all my finances, to more often purchase Apple hardware and have something to review for you guys and things like that. So that's why I keep asking things like that. Okay. Let's continue the story. 500 nits of brightness, 1 billion colors. We've already covered all those major spec points. A18 Pro. So again, they do bring up messages, WhatsApp, Canva, Excel, Safari, obviously. They compare it to the Core Ultra 5. Okay, so that's one. Did they mention it? As well as a production Intel Core Ultra 5 base PC with Intel graphics, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigabytes SSD, and the latest version of Windows 11 Home. So by the way, there apparently are still plenty of Windows MacBooks with 8 gigs of RAM for Apple to test. They use stuff like speedometer 3.1, so that's going to be a web browsing test. So they used already Safari 26.3 on macOS Tahoe, and they used the latest Chrome and Edge, so that's nice. Performance tests are conducted using specific computer system and reflects the approximate performance of MacBook Neo. Okay, that makes sense. And yeah, we have the A18 Pro here, 6-core CPU, 5-core GPU, and yeah, they just call it Core Ultra 5. They do not, unfortunately, specify. Riley saying, am I a germaphobe? I'm not a phobe, but I am careful with germs. That just, comes with, like everyone in the medical field is either completely unfazed by stuff like germs. Like anecdote time during my medical studies, or my med school, I guess is the proper word in English, right? I had a Professor Chaika was his name. Or is his name? I hope he's not dead. He's a good man. And he was one of the things that originally scared me from dermatology. And we had actually patients with psoriasis or atopical dermatitis. I do not quite remember which it was exactly. And he was like touching every patient right in front of us. And we did not yet know the diagnosis. We were like, oh God, my God, is this chicken pox or something like that, right? But he was also touching patients who he didn't yet have a diagnosis for, right? So and he touched them without gloves. That's the main point of the anecdote, right? So some doctors are either completely unfazed by germs, not even bothering to completely disinfect their hands or whatever, while others are completely paranoid. They will like put on 2 or 3 gloves when it's absolutely necessary. They will disinfect their hands 2 or 3 times more than they should. So no, I'm not a germaphobe, but I'm on neither extreme of the spectrum. I am afraid of germs because obviously they can be very dangerous. I love this blue, by the way. This indigo slaps, absolutely. It is basically very close to the color of the 17 Pro, but it is brighter. And I have to say, like, that iPhone 17 Pro blue color is almost perfect, like in terms of being my favorite darker shade of blue, and therefore being one of my absolute favorite colors. This actually, I think, kind of nails it 100%. Like, it being both darker and brighter would make it look worse, in my opinion. Still no iPad updates. I can keep you guys informed. But hey, guys, I promise you, Apple is not going to announce anything today anymore. If they were going to announce something tomorrow, I might find some time to stream after work, though it's probably not going to be 4 p.m. As it did today. Yeah, Dominator Gaming, sorry. I understand you're very excited about the iPad, the base iPad. That's not seemingly happening today, but hey, you guys can keep checking the website and stuff like that and letting me know. Maybe there's something that I miss. So 1080p camera, Magic Keyboard, new multi-touch trackpad. So by new here, they do mean worse, right? They point out clicking, scrolling, swiping, and pinching. But obviously, they do not point out any kind of force touch functionality. Martin is saying, I think the memory is not much. It could have been 16 gigabytes. No, at this price, it really wouldn't have been 16 gigabytes, but I think it should have been 12. I think with 12 gigabytes, I would actually be recommending this left and right. With 8 gigabytes, I honestly recommend it now mostly to the education market, because I think at $500, and if you're really going to use it primarily as like a higher end Chromebook, because this is going to destroy the shit out of any Chromebook, that's what I recommend. Don't forget, by the way, I know a lot of people are here downplaying the specs or whatever. The A18 Pro, because we looked at those specs, right? Where's the single core performance, right? 440, right? Around 3500. And let's look at the highest end Panther Lake, right? I always forget. Oh my God. Panther Lake. Highest end Geekbench. Is the new multi-touch trackpad like the one on the Magic Keyboard of iPad Air? Yes, exactly. And so is the keyboard. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually share a lot of Panther Lake X9. It would be then 388H. Okay, Geekbench 6. That is what we need. Just so you have a little bit of a comparison point. This Panther Lake Klein. Right. This is over 10% slower, and this is the highest end Panther Lake chip, right? Now, is it going to be actually slower in real world? No. It has more multi-threading performance. It has more memory bandwidth. It usually will, well, more power won't help it necessarily because the architecture is just slower, but it is not going to be slower than it. But just in terms of like the raw specs that it has, it's not as bad as some people make it out to be. The MacBook Neo does not support the new Studio display. Yes, yes. That's one thing that I haven't yet really gone to, because obviously we've talked about the design. Oh, battery life, something that we haven't yet talked about. All-day battery life, 16 hours of battery life on a single charge. That's for video watching, right? Yeah, video streaming battery life test with 1080p content in Safari while connected to wireless web battery life tested by browsing 25 popular websites while connected to Wi-Fi. Wait, which one is it then? Like, what number does it get in video watching, and what number does it get in Oh yeah, it's 16 hours for video streaming and up to 11 hours to wireless web based on a 36.5 watt hour lithium ion battery. Okay. In my country, in Hungary, the price of this MacBook is an average payment. I assume you mean like a month's salary. It could have been more memory than 8 gigs. Yeah, I'm not denying that. Like, look, like, could something, like, I'm saying it wouldn't be 16 gigabytes, right? Because that would risk cannibalizing the MacBook Air. But I think it could have been 12 gigabytes. My personal prediction was basically exactly almost these specs, but with 12 gigs of RAM, but it would be $100 more expensive. So my prediction about half a year ago was actually correct for the MacBook Air. And you guys will see that if you join our Discord. I might link that message just to show off a little bit. But I predicted about half a year ago that the MacBook Air would go up in price by $100, but would do that while giving you double the storage. I predicted that this MacBook would be 256 gigabytes, but I predicted that it would be $700 and with 12 gigs of RAM. So Apple basically decided to go a little bit lower end in specs, and also cheaper. But in terms of overall value proposition, I think I actually kind of nailed it. So there's no display output through Type-C. Wait, what? Okay, now we have to see more. Wait, no, of course it does. That's what DisplayPort is. DisplayPort is display output. Does Apple not specify what? Yeah, it's 4K at 60 hertz. Yeah, I know some of you don't like that it doesn't have backlit. One thing that I will have to say, you have to maybe see if you can somehow try it. Obviously, Apple stores are lit, so that's a problem for a comparison point. But the reason why this has a white keyboard, so probably don't buy it if you like eating a lot of Cheetos and then like punching your grease-covered fingers on top of the keyboard. But it basically, the idea is that the brightness of the screen is going to be reflected by a white keyboard, and that's going to help you see the keys. So obviously on a black keyboard, that's not going to work. That's why it has backlit keys. It is not a foolproof solution. I would still prefer for it to be backlit, but it's the same compromise that Apple made on the Magic Keyboard for the iPad Air. That also doesn't have backlit keys, and it also doesn't have a Force Touch trackpad. 4 hours drop in wireless web compared to the Air. I'm kind of surprised it's not 2. That's because a lot of people don't understand how optimized Apple's chips are. Yes, an M-series chip, a larger screen, whatever, P3 color gamut, they will consume more power, but they will not consume 50% more almost, right? Because when you look at, for example, the MacBook Air here, and where's its battery, right? It's 53.8. So yeah, that's basically 50% more battery capacity. But because wireless web basically is mostly dependent on like single core performance. Again, this is not 120 hertz, it's not crazy bright, right? This is how you get 4 hours of extra web. The reason I find it interesting that that the video watching is actually not that substantially different, but that's probably because the chip power consumption is super low anyway, and maybe the screen actually consumes a surprising amount less energy because it doesn't have stuff like P3 color gamut or True Tone and stuff like that. For this price, what kind of Apple product can I buy on the used market? Probably an M3 MacBook Air. Yeah, probably around that. M4 would be more expensive by about $100. But it would then also have 16 gigs of RAM. So at that point, if we are then, let's say we compare the value proposition of the 512 gigabyte MacBook Neo with the value proposition of the 256 gigabyte, but with 16 gigs of RAM MacBook Air, I would argue you get really close to that. And definitely once you go with the M3 MacBook Air, especially if you're willing to go with 8 gigabytes, suddenly you might actually find something that undercuts this. And then again, you will still get all the goodies of the MacBook Air, backlit keys, Force Touch trackpad, all that fun stuff. Yeah, I see some of you are agreeing with the M3 Air. Wouldn't the light from the display be enough? It is, but also it will depend on the angle at which you hold your Mac's screen, right? So on the iPad, I always found that this argument doesn't work because if we actually go to Apple's website, first of all, for some of you, I can check. Apple still hasn't launched the 12th generation iPad. But if we look at the 11th generation iPad or iPad generation 10.5, right? Look, this is actually the first time where Apple did this. White keyboard, non-force touch trackpad. Well, granted, the first Magic keyboards didn't have it either, right? But on the iPad, this doesn't make sense to me because the iPads, while the light, sure, it will go everywhere, but primarily it's going up, right? On the MacBook, you can imagine like making the screen more like 90 degrees or even more like 85-ish, and suddenly more light falls onto the keyboard. On the iPad, I think this does not work. I think all iPad keyboards need to be backlit. And there are a lot of alternatives. Like I always recommend looking at the Logitechs before you do look at Apple's first-party solutions. But on the MacBook, of course, if you see like this, right, you would have the screen going. You could even pull it a little bit forward, which wouldn't be great now for your own viewing angle, but at least it would really light up the keyboard. But yes, this is why the keyboard is white. That's the principle here that Apple is trying to maintain and how they're saving money. So 16 hours of video watching, 11 hours of wireless web, 1080p camera, dual microphones, so that's also fewer microphones than the others, but still beamforming and probably more than good enough. Apple's microphones have always been amazing, even before the latest AI improvements and even before they added more and more of those. And dual side firing speakers, so if you're wondering what this cutout on the side was, where can I find a good image of that? Oh, that's just the colors. That's nice. So those are the side firing speakers. I was first confused. I was like, wait, is this like a 5G antenna or whatever? But no, it is dual firing speakers on the side. The light from the display will be usable if you are a light mode guy. That's also partially true, yes. If you're a programmer and if you really want to work in dark mode, then yes, this will not work as well, to say the least. Do you have a keyboard for your iPad? I do have it. I don't use it, so I can quickly show my iPad here. Always have it next to me to read the comments from you guys. So basically, the most important thing to me was to keep my iPad protected and to have a Surface-like kickstand. And this is a relatively new type of accessory from Taurus. It has a great has a great full metal kickstand. It protects my iPad while still making it somewhat visible from the back. It has a place for the pencil, but it won't fall off if the iPad drops. It's one of my favorite accessories. But before that, I always used the Logitech ones, and I still have. The accessory. I just don't use it. So first, I can show you Tor. They actually made a new generation of that, but it's exclusive for the iPad Pro M4 and M5. O stand, iPad. Okay, yeah. First change to English, and then O stand with pencil holder. There it is. So that's the one I use. This is a slightly newer one. You can see the trackpad is both longer and wider, so that should be actually make it even more usable. They make it a little bit sleeker looking. I actually like how transparent it is and stuff like that. But beyond that, I always look Logitech. Forgive me if it takes me a while to remember the name. I think it's the Combo Touch. Jesus, have to switch it to English. It always wants to recommend the German websites first. I mean, that's still English, but whatever, it's still German. But you will able to see the keyboard, right? So the main point is it's a full case for it, but it combines it with. So this is for the base iPad. Where's some more premium version of this that I can actually show for my iPad? Logitech. Where doesn't it just say for iPad? Or does it? Do I just have to look at keyboards? iPads. Yeah, that's just keyboards, man. Do I have to look at cases? Oh, iPad cases. I'm so stupid. There it is. So this is the premium version, Combo Touch for iPad Air. So there it is for the iPad Pro. So here does it not have like a sleeve for the Apple Pencil, because the Apple Pencil obviously still magnetically connects. You can see that it has a very wide kickstand that gives you a lot of angles, right? So that's the one I had, at least the previous generation, but it aged really poorly. So I ended up getting a case, but I just wasn't willing to get this again and give them the full price. I even contacted them and said, can I please just have the case portion without the keyboard, right? I would like to pay you money. Can I have it? And they said, no, you have to buy it with the keyboard and trackpad. Okay. Is there anything I missed in like the newsroom report? So we talked about the performance, still 16 core neural engine. So nothing crazy here. I actually think that, like, I know, look, it's not going to be metal. Like don't forget, these are European prices, so this is with a value-added tax of 19%. If you actually see the prices for USD, they're actually pretty reasonable. They're a full $100 or more cheaper than the Magic Keyboard. And I do find this form factor to be more friendly, because the most important thing about it is that you can use the case without the keyboard, right? So let's say, like me, you still have a cover glass on top of your iPad, so you aren't necessarily afraid of your display scuffing while in your backpack or something like that. You just use the keyboard. You just use the case portion, and when you need the keyboard portion, you connect that too. Right? I actually prefer it versus the Magic Keyboard. I've always said while I think the Magic Keyboard is probably the most beautiful solution for something like this in the industry, I do prefer the approach of the Microsoft Surface. I think that's the one thing they really got right. It's that kickstand with keyboard combination. It's not great on the lap, That's absolutely true, but it is still a very versatile way to use a keyboard. I'm from Europe and I know this price in my country. It has 26 VAT, so it's much pricier. Wait, it would be that for me too, right? Like, if it's 20% value added tax, it would actually be more than that for me. Uh, um, okay, so battery life, keyboard and trackpad. We covered the downsides here, the dual speakers. Okay, connectivity. So this is one thing that apparently was leaked wrong yesterday, like that it was Wi-Fi 7, but ironically, this is a very confusing spec by Apple standards because this offers Bluetooth 6, which would be basically only offered by Apple's N1 modem, the in-house design one, but it does not have Wi-Fi 7. In a way, I think maybe it could be like a poor yield N1 that does not support the full spec range, or maybe it has a more primitive antenna linked to it, which would be a weird thing to do. But this is Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 6. So when we actually go to the compare page and we look at the M5 MacBook Pro, you'll find that that's one spec that it actually has as an advantage over the MacBook Pro, because the MacBook, and that's not the premium version. The one with the M5 Pro and the M5 Max, they have the N1 chip. But the base version, that still has like a Broadcom modem, I assume. So this is Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3, while this is Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 6, which is a really funny way to differentiate the products. Ports. Wait, why does Apple not bring up MagSafe here? Does MagSafe not count as ports? Does Apple count that as part of the battery? Did the leak yesterday not say that it would have MagSafe 3? So I guess that was wrong, right? It features 2 USB-C ports and a headphone jack for wired audio, plus Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 6. Yeah, that's interesting. That's something actually. So I guess, or wait, did the leak yesterday so it didn't have MagSafe? Because there was so much information for me to digest yesterday that I might have digested it the wrong way, I guess, which wouldn't surprise me between all the stuff like M5 MacBook Air, M5 Pro and M5 Max MacBook Pro, pricing changes, storage configuration changes, the details on the new processors, the new Studio Display, the new Studio Display XDR. There was just so much. Yeah, leaks were wrong because they said Wi-Fi 7. Okay, I'm at least not wrong about that. So it's funny then, that means the name leaked correctly, but the specs leaked wrong, right? It's like the Indiana Jones thing, you chose wrongly, right? Like, that's funny that happens still in this way. Let's see Apple's website. We can keep the comparison page on here. So MacBook Neo. Again, I do like when I see some people complain, right? This is $349. It's half the storage. It's 1/4 less memory. It's 6 gigabytes. It has no Apple Intelligence support. It does not even support the latest Apple Pencil, right? It supports either the Apple Pencil USB-C, or you have to do some weird shit with the Apple Pencil, the original Lightning version, right? It has an A16 chip, which of course is not a Pro chip. It's not an A17 chip. It's not an A18 generation chip. So this one forgoes hardware accelerated ray tracing, mesh shading, dynamic caching, all that stuff. And yet when it came out and it got its price reduction to the current $350, people were celebrating it, right? Let's. How much does it does this accessory cost? So let's forget the pencils for a moment, because again, this is actually like a lot of people asked if this MacBook was future-proof. Like, unfortunately, this iPad, when it comes to its Apple Pencil support, is not very future-proof. And yeah, the Magic Keyboard Folio, which does that exact trick, right? White It gives you the angles that you get with a MacBook, of course, a trackpad that's not a Force Touch trackpad. And now it costs how much, guys? $600, I guess. Wait, why does it not add to the cost? Oh, I have to confirm that it's English. Right? Now it's the cost of this MacBook, and it comes with less RAM, less storage, a worse processor, a worse modem, a worse speaker system, no headphone jack, less ports, a less capable operating system, but it has like touchscreen, right? That's the benefit here. But for some reason, there wasn't this hate. And like, I do not get that. Like, the MacBook Neo is cheaper, and if it's not for you, you can get a more expensive MacBook that's better. That's how Apple designed it. They want you to buy the more expensive one, because with similar profit margin, a more expensive product will mean more profit for Apple. It's not that complicated. Let me make sure my stream is working well. Yeah. Nicely. We have still, guys, we're almost 2 hours into the stream. We still have almost 35 people watching. Please, if you're enjoying this, if you haven't yet liked the video, please do so. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to stay engaged with me and this community in the future. Share the video out to anybody who you think might enjoy it. Let me know what you think of this MacBook, the other announcements, any questions you might have, and also something we like to do on this channel. We like to react to videos by other YouTubers, on YouTube, and like yesterday, I reacted to Drew from Tailosive Tech and his reactions. I reacted to the camera comparison by Max Tech from between the Galaxy S26 Ultra and the iPhone 17 Pro Max. So you can suggest more topic, and of course, if you want to support me more directly, you can leave a super chat, a super sticker, or you can become a channel member right here on YouTube or a supporter over on Patreon. As Stu saying, M2 refurbished iPad Air is a good deal for those who want an A18 iPad. That's exactly correct. Yes. And that's similar here with the MacBook Neo now. A refurbished M3 MacBook Air is a good alternative here. And if you can get an M2 MacBook Air at substantially less money than this, then as a value proposition, it's better too, right? Especially if you can also then somehow get the 16 gigs of RAM version. So but this has always been the case. Like, a lot of people expect when a new product comes in that it suddenly immediately is better value than used products, refurbished products, or products that are so long in the tooth for the market that they're discounted just from the fact that resellers want to clear out their inventory. That's just not going to happen. That would reduce profit margins with every subsequent generation. In fact, that's often what happens with PC parts. That's why they are so much cheaper than for Macs and stuff like that. Apple has a lot more control over their ecosystem. Apple controls what products launch and when, and sometimes they will deliberately price cheaper products just a tad bit too expensive by like 5 or 10% to make sure that more people are pushed towards buying the mid-range product, or hell, if you can stretch your budget, even the higher end one. Riley, react to my boy Drew. Well, I don't think Drew even done something that substantial today. Let me just embiggen myself for a moment. Woo, woo, woo. Just so my YouTube shows no personal data while I load it up. Okay, doesn't show anything bad, so I can ensmallen myself again. Riley, that was some big mark action specifically for you. And somebody is getting... wait, why can I not... Oh, sorry. So like this, viewing my channel. And yes... you are being muted for 30 minutes. Bye. Guys, I do not understand why you would spam shit like, when's the A18 iPad coming, right? That's just not funny. Like we have covered this. God, I wish I was big enough to have moderators and not have to think about that. Some of you guys are amazing in the community, and you actually are moderators in my Discord. Not that it's really needed. Everyone in the Discord is similarly amazing. But on YouTube, I definitely do not have mods. I guess, Riley, you would be like a potential mod, but I do not know if I trust you, man. um, so, MacBook Neo, we covered the entire story here. This includes 90% recycled aluminum overall and 100% recycled cobalt in the battery. Okay, so just the regular stuff here. The spam ruined the big mark. Mute for eternity. I muted for 30 minutes. I'll give people a chance to basically be like, oh, it was a one-time joke, or some people are just bots who can only spam by their very definition. Then them I will ban if once they try it again. So I try to be a little bit more lenient. MacBook Neo is manufactured with 40% renewable electricity, like wind and solar, across the supply chain. I actually would have thought that it might be at least over 50 at this point, but interesting. So I guess that's something that Apple continues to push with like Chinese suppliers and stuff like that. So 8 gigs of RAM. I'm surprised that what Apple did not do is make the 512 gigabyte version $200 more expensive, but give it 12 gigs of RAM. So no configuration here. But then again, I guess the reason why this is only 8 gigabytes is because it's basically reusing the exact A18 Pro with the same memory as the iPhone 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max, right? So here you have 60 gigabytes of memory bandwidth. If we actually compare it to the M1 MacBook Air, where is it? It's so stupid that the scrolling is broken whenever I use like my Logitech mouse and stuff like this. 16 core. Oh, Apple does not mention the bandwidth. Yeah, okay. So this uses 50% faster memory than the M1. It uses 6400 rather than 4266. So with this means the M1 has 66 gigabytes of memory bandwidth. So that's a bit faster than this, but not even 20%, just 10%. I wonder when will Apple consider a bit of silicon in the batteries. We'll have to see. Like, definitely not on this kind of device. Okay, so I know some of you asked about like screen output because like you were worried about USB-C, but no. One port gives you 10 gigabits per second. I hate that the ports are not interchangeable. Like either one could be USB 3, right? But maybe they both link to one controller. But okay, so the top one is USB 3, the lower one is USB 2. 10 gigabits per second. So that's the same speed as the iPhone, actually. That's something that also many people don't bring up. A lot of people criticize Apple for USB 2 speeds on like lower end iPhones, but very few people mention that the iPhone 17 Pro is one of a very few amount of phones that actually supports 10 gigabits per second. Samsung has done 5 gigabits per second year after year after year. Okay, and so supports one external display with up to a native resolution at 4K at 60 Hz, simultaneously supports the built-in display at full native resolution, and the USB 3 port supports native DisplayPort 1.4 speeds. Yep, this all makes sense. Video playback is H.264, H.265, or HEVC, AV1. So obviously that's Apple has decoders for AV1, but not encoders. ProRes, that's actually interesting. Do they have ProRes encoders? Yes. So in some ways, this would actually probably be faster for certain media work than even much more powerful laptops. If your camera shoots ProRes, this could be faster than like a Panther Lake system that would have to handle that with the CPU. Alternatively, if you edit AV1, that's something that this one only has decode for, so only playback, not encode actually. Okay, and I think that roughly answers. So this is 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. It does not have high impedance audio. I'll have to check which headphone jack. So the M1 does not have it. The M2 started to have it. Okay, so it basically goes back in that regard to an M1 spec in a way. Yeah, but I think beyond that, that pretty much answers all of our questions, right? Again, just so you guys are clear, Mac OS. No Mac OS Lite, no Mac OS E or whatever, right? No Mac OS Neo. It is Mac OS with all the apps and all the features supported. Obviously not at the same performance level at like an M5 MacBook Air, but that's why it's almost half the price. Yeah, and it comes with a 20-watt USB-C power and a USB-C charge cable, but yes, it does not have MagSafe. Basically, what it recommends you do, you plug it into the lower charge port, at which point it charges, right? Is there a charging speed difference between the two ports? Please, Apple, that would be stupid. Simultaneously, USB, charging. Okay, so charging works over both of them, so that's nice. And at least Apple does not mention any charging speed differences. Yeah, that all makes sense to me. You guys can, of course, leave me any other things that I might have missed about it, or maybe you're in just complete disagreement with me. I mean, yesterday it was fun to react from Drew from Tailosive Tech. And see what he has to say. He's probably gonna love it because he always hates on the iPad. So yeah, I think I would love to react to Drew. Guys, again, we're about a little over 2 hours into the stream. You guys know all the YouTube jazz by now, as we call it, for supporting this channel, subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting, super chatting, channel membership making, Patreon adding, and Discord joining. So hopefully you want to join the community and help it grow. Let's see what Drew has to say. We can make this 1080p is enough, and we can make it a tiny bit faster at 1.1, and let's get started.
Crap, guys, $599. That was definitely on the ambitious end of the pricing spectrum people were predicting, but with all of the price hikes we saw with the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro yesterday, I was not feeling too great about it. I was like, this is probably going to be a $799 MacBook.
I was feeling $699, but 12 gigs of RAM, so basically Apple went a little bit below that in both spec and cost.
The base model, they were talking about 128 gigs of storage, so I was like, yeah, maybe this is going to be another decoy model that's made to make the MacBook Air look like a great deal, but boy, I am so happy to be proven wrong. This has John Turnus written all over it. It must be his doing. John Turnus for CEO. If this is the kind of hardware we're going to get under his leadership, get Tim Cook out of there right now.
I know he's joking, but I find ironically seen people think that these decisions are already being made by John Turnus, whatever.
Because holy crap, I thought this was just going to be like a de-featured MacBook Air. I thought it was going to be the same chassis and everything, but no, this is a brand new MacBook designed from the ground up. It's not the same chassis. It's actually the exact same weight of the MacBook Air, even though it is slightly thicker, but also not quite as wide, which is kind of interesting. So the mind-blowing thing about this MacBook that I want to keep in mind through the duration of this video is it's $599 for everyday people, and for education, $499.
Yeah,
okay?
This is correct. I think its education pricing is its absolutely like hidden weapon here.
The leak and overly optimistic rumor community was predicting a $499 starting price for education, and we thought that was going to be 128 gigs. As far as I can tell, there's no 128 gig option. 256 by default. There's just never been a MacBook even remotely close to this price point, and in my opinion,
and by the way, a lot of people, like a lot of you asked about like refurbished devices and stuff like that, right? John Turnidups. what the like? Sorry, Riley, I butchered a potential nickname for John Turnus here. Like a lot of people bring up like refurbished or just like discounted MacBook Airs, like M3, M4, whatever, right? But then they forget, well, what do you think will happen with this MacBook after 3 months on the market? Do you not think that it's going to be like $550 on Amazon, right? Do you not think that a refurbished model would be like $530 or something like that?
Compromises. So it comes in these 4 gorgeous color options, and at first glance I thought, oh wow, this is a cheap Mac because they actually went with white keys for the keyboard. Thank you, Apple, for not using white bezels, even though you probably could have gotten away.
I would have loved, at least on the silver model, I think it would have looked really cool.
With it, considering there's no notch on this thing. It's got a little bit of chunkier bezels, but for the price point, I'm willing to forgive it. But still,
that's correct. That's the correct attitude. So Drew and I often disagree with his takes on iPads. He often kind of wants to turn iPads into Macs, but here, because obviously now we are both pretty positive, we are mostly in alignment.
Best. Thank you for keeping those on this more affordable machine. But then once I started switching to the other color options, I realized, oh, wait a second. I'm pretty sure the keyboard actually changes color based on which MacBook you order.
Does?
So the yellow one has slightly yellower keys and the blush one has slightly more blush keys.
Okay.
That sounds not the most efficient for manufacturing, but hey, Apple's almost $4 trillion company. I guess they can afford that. I feel weird about the name. I wasn't sure about it when it was first rumored, but the price is so good, I don't care. I'm all on board.
That's also the correct attitude. I've seen some people say, whoa, the name, what does it mean? Who cares? The MacBook Air is not the thinnest or lightest laptop anymore, like, because it's aluminum based, because it's relatively chunky in build, like not in terms of thickness, but in terms of like density. It's just like it's heavier than a lot of stuff in the PC industry. But yeah, like who cares? A name is a name. What matters is what's behind it.
The Neo train. Let's have iPhone Neo. Let's have iPad Neo. It's more fun than just saying the regular iPad or the regular iPhone. That's dumb. Let's have a name that's short and sweet. But
yeah, exactly. Hey, Drew and I are really in a flow here. That's why I want the base iPad to not be the thing that you guys keep spamming here. I do not want it to be the 12th gen iPad. I want it to be, because you know how ridiculous like 24th generation iPad is going to sound at some point. So I want it to be iPad Neo.
It's the point across, and Neo means new, I guess. So let's keep focusing on the positives. It's a 13-inch display, so only 0.6 inches smaller than the MacBook Air. And I genuinely thought it was going to be dimmer, because that's what some of the rumors were saying. I was thinking like 400.
Yeah, a lot of these rumors were not based on actual leaks. They were kind of more educated guesses on what Apple could cut to differentiate those products.
Nope, it's the exact same brightness of the MacBook Air as well at 500 nits. It has a 16-hour battery life, so not great, but still longer than any iPad battery, which is always
He always brings that up. I promise you, an iPad lasts way longer than 10 hours for just 1080p movie playback, especially on like the tandem OLED iPad, where the pixels above and below turn off, and most of the 4.3-inch screen is off basically, and you have 16:9 in the middle. You have the efficiency of like an M5 chip, which is on an even newer node. You have the efficiency of a N1 modem for streaming data from Wi-Fi. Do you really think that it, like, Drew, come on, just because Apple doesn't mention longer than 10 hours, this actually is only rated for 11 hours of wireless web. As far as I know, Apple doesn't even give video watch numbers for the iPad.
Forever been 10 hours, even if you spend $3,000 on them. And it still has a 1080p webcam.
I mean, the iPad Pro 13-inch, it technically would have a slightly larger screen because of the aspect ratio and how math works, but it also has actually a larger battery for that. And its screen is not only OLED, so if you normalize the brightness, it should be more efficient, but its screen is also variable refresh rate because it's proper ProMotion. So if you're playing back a 24 FPS movie, it can run that in a 48 hertz container. It will actually look smoother and it will consume less energy.
A point of cost savings that many Windows and Chromebook companies use. They put in these like potato webcams that you can barely see anything on. Very grateful to see Apple didn't compromise there. It's not a center stage camera, but it's still 1080p, which is awesome. It's an A18 Pro chip, so they didn't want to spec it up to the A19 Pro, but
I guess they were like finished enough early with its production, but if this was A19 Pro and had 12 gigs of RAM, honestly, I would be telling people to buy it over the M5 MacBook Air. But I guess, like, just because of the price difference, even if it was at that point $700, I still think that would have made it properly future-proof.
Think for the target demographic of this MacBook, the A18 chip is perfectly fine, and it has side firing speakers. No, those are not SD card slots.
yeah, that like my first thought was, is it like some kind of 5G antenna or is it an SD card slot? Before I read that it's
so I don't expect the sound system on this thing to be amazing, but I don't care. Education $4.99. Holy crap. Spoiler alert, if you don't finish this video, I already ordered one. I was just too excited. I couldn't calm down, and there was just so many new changes all happening at once, and I've never in my life ordered a MacBook and seen the receipt for under $700. That's absolutely insane. I got the yellow one, base model. But okay, let's calm down a little bit, even though Drew's spending all his money. We're going to switch the whole Tailosive network over to...
I would actually like to know, did he order like the Studio Display XDR or something like that? Guys, do any of you follow like Drew on Twitter? Like, has he said anything about that? Because he alluded to that in the last video.
The MacBook Neo now. No, probably not. But let's talk about some of the compromises because, yes, this is a cheap MacBook, so obviously they had to take a lot of things out. There's no Apple N1 chip, so you're not getting Wi-Fi 7 support. But interestingly, it still does support Bluetooth 6, so that was kind of a...
Okay, I think because Drew actually ordered it, he seems to be better informed on its specs because with the Studio Display and the MacBook Pro yesterday, he was making some mistakes. Here he actually seems to be properly informed.
I thought it was going to use some older MediaTek modem that gave it like Bluetooth 5 or something, but no, still latest version of Bluetooth.
Oh man, haven't seen you because you joined later, but I know that's because of the time zone differences. I'd like a Neo in orange and I don't even need it. Well, I hope if Apple keeps to the MacBook Neo, like it probably won't be on an annual upgrade schedule, even though it could be because there are annual upgrades to the A series chips, right? Like I guess they could, but what they will definitely update it, right? Unless it somehow either flops or cannibalizes the MacBook Air too much. Either one of those extremes would probably be not very good. But I do assume that they will keep using different colors gen to gen just to attract people visually, have something new for like the ad campaigns, right? Like, I mean, and now they can, like, so much of Apple is back to aluminum, right? They can be much more playful with colors.
Choice if you really like to spec up your MacBooks because there's really only two spec options. By default, it's 256 gigs, and for about $100 more, you can get 512 gigs with Touch ID. So yes, interesting. Like, I don't think Apple has ever like hidden a biometric behind a storage increase.
Yeah, not behind the storage increase, but they did hide it behind a price increase on Apple's keyboard, right? Their Bluetooth keyboard. They're white. By the way, they're white keyboards without backlit keys. So this is not entirely new to Apple. How did they come up with the name? Like this, because that's apparently a name Tim likes. Oh, Jesus, I'm so stupid. Not new. New iPad. Jesus, why can I not type? New iPad. Is there an image of it being announced on stage? Oh, man. Google is so garbage. You can... These days. Man, new iPad. Oh, God. New iPad 3. iPad third generation. So yeah, okay. These are the images. The new iPad. This is how it was introduced. This is branding that Tim Cook likes apparently. This is it was the first iPad with a Retina display, 2048 by 1536 pixels. This is a new iPad. And then Apple eventually pivoted to calling the iPads by generation. That's how we are now talking about the 12th generation iPad. And basically, that's what happened with the MacBook Neo. It's basically the new MacBook, but with a Latin word.
Like that's a first for them, but I guess Touch ID might cost a little something extra. So the base model MacBook Neo does not have Touch ID. You got to just enter your password.
Yeah, of course. Neo reminds everyone of the Matrix. I mean, Neo is an anagram for one because Neo is the one in the Matrix. So I guess you could also say that this is the one MacBook, the one to rule them all.
The old days,
to mix now all the franchises in the world.
If you have an Apple Watch, that can also unlock your Mac as long as you're wearing it and your watch is unlocked. So I'm personally fine with them leaving that out if it saves money. But there's basically no options when it comes to unified memory. If you have a MacBook Neo, you have to have 8 gigs of RAM. That might be a deal breaker to some people, but again, if you're upset by that, I don't think you're the target demographic.
Exactly. That's what I've been trying to tell most of you. And guess what? Drew is going to get much less hate for it because he does way fewer live streams than I do.
There are still many great options on MacBook Airs. Even if you don't want the M5 variant, you can find the M4 MacBook Air for like $800. The other thing they took out that some people might be upset about, but I don't really care, is there's no MagSafe, which I pretty much exclusively charge my MacBook with USB-C anyway, so that's not really a big deal to me. But yep, just 2 USB-C
I charge
ports.
mine pretty much exclusively over MagSafe, but that's because I mostly charge it during my streams. For everything else, I usually have enough battery, but like you cannot see it, but to the right, I have an accessory to connect my Ethernet cable. Then I have my headphones connected to the headphone jack. I have a USB-C port going to my Shure microphone. I have a USB-C cable charging to my iPhone, which I use as continuity camera. And then I have my MagSafe charger.
Headphone jack, though. I would have thought this could have been the product to justify no headphone jack for the first time on a Mac. But Apple's probably right that for educational buyers, there's probably going to be a bunch of wired headphones kids are going to use with these things. So headphone jack is probably appropriate to stay on that device, which can't be said.
I would argue it makes more sense here than it does on like the MacBook Air.
The budget iPads that people think are so good for school, got to use USB-C headphones over there. Yeah. And interestingly enough, if you go into the tech specs, you'll discover there's a high-speed USB-C port and a low-speed USB-C port. So the I/O is definitely not great here. Neither of them are Thunderbolt. Keep in mind, this is an A18 Pro chip. This is an iPhone CPU, and the iPhone CPU doesn't have Thunderbolt controllers on it. So again, to keep the price down and to keep the complexity of this machine down, one port is USB 3 and one port is USB 2, which sounds crazy because it's a MacBook and we're so used to talking about MacBook Airs and Pros that have crazy Thunderbolt transfer speeds. But keep in mind, this thing is going to be cross-shopped with like Windows PCs and Chromebooks. Those kinds of things also have a lot of USB 2.0 ports where...
Yeah, a lot of them have like USB 2 with like USB-A ports. They will be like for mouse control for like gaming, and they will be like often on the left side because the idea is you are going to connect like your gaming mouse with a USB-A often to like either a cable that's just always connected to the mouse or a USB-C. Like when you look at like my Logitech, there's a USB-C up front here, right? Or you'll put a dongle for 2.4 gigahertz networking, right? And put it into your USB 2, USB A port. And I hate that we still have any devices with USB A that are launching new in like the year of our Lord 2026.
The point of that port might literally just be like plugging in a keyboard or charging a phone or something very, very basic. So not going to be a lot of I/O that plugs into this thing for sure. But
Neo would be selling out if they added USB-C port on the right side. No, it wouldn't change anything. I promise you that the market that this is trying to address, it does not care about it. The people who care about this are like unironically content creators like me. Like if you like I actually think that something like HDMI or SD cards would actually go harder for this than like USB-C on the other side, because I think that like HDMI especially would allow people to use this much more often without any kind of adapter, right? Like if you're a student and you're connecting to like a projector or a TV in your school for like your PowerPoint presentation, your keynote, whatever. But I do not think that an extra USB-C port would be changing anything.
Overall, I'm just so thankful it's not coming with 128 gigs, even though so many of you defended that. And one part of the rumors that is true is it is not coming with a True Tone display, but I don't think at this price point you're gonna miss it.
I haven't used True Tone forever. I think ever since display actually also turned very accurate with like P3, I've started to actually dislike True Tone, because especially as it keeps adjusting over the day, it just like I always have like a hard time looking at it and seeing a difference to how like a YouTube video looks. I don't want a YouTube video that I watch to look different from when I watch it in the morning than when I watch it later in the evening. I'll just turn down the brightness to like preserve my eyes.
Phone jack also doesn't support high impedance headphones, but if you can afford high impedance headphones, you can afford a MacBook Air. The headphones
that is 100% correct. That I fully agree
talking
with.
about are probably going to be more expensive than the MacBook Neo, which is kind of nuts. And it should be mentioned the keyboard is no longer backlit. So
okay, so Drew did way better research here. I don't think he mentioned the trackpad not being force touch, but he did not get anything wrong like the way he did yesterday.
To rely on the brightness of the display to know which keys to press. But hey, at the end of the day, this thing, unlike an iPhone, still comes with a power adapter, a 20-watt one. I'm pretty sure that's like one of the smallest wattage bricks we've seen come with a MacBook in a long, long time.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny to see that. But hey, the battery in this thing is probably tiny anyway, getting
Okay, so he didn't look up the battery capacity. It's 36.5 watt hours. That's in the tech specs.
hours off of an A18 Pro chip. Some people thought it was going to have like a crazy 30+ hour battery life.
But then it would actually be like, Kevchato, you mentioned something like, oh, it would sell crazy because of an extra USB port. I think if it kept the battery capacity of the MacBook Air and suddenly had like 20 hours of most battery tests, it would really be a problem for the MacBook Air.
It had such a low-powered chip in it, but my guess is they went with a really, really small battery in this thing to get the price down. And you know what? I'd say that's a worthy trade-off. The MacBook Air has an 18-hour battery life. That's one of the most popular MacBooks in the world, so this one's just slightly shorter, but again, still better than an iPad's battery.
Larger difference, though, for wireless web. It's 15 hours on the MacBook Air. It's 11 hours on this one.
No fast charging capability either, so this thing's probably going to take a little while to charge to full. The website's not even saying how long. Like
2 hours, I guess. If it supports actually the full 20 watts, then for a roughly 40 watt hour battery should be fine.
Like the 0 to 50% time is, so we'll just have to wait and find out. In case you're curious of the actual watt hours, like a MacBook Air has a little over 50 watt hours. The MacBook Neo has like 36 watt hours.
Okay, so he did
pretty
look it
tiny
up.
Battery in this thing, but that keeps it lightweight. That keeps it cheap.
I guess he cut those parts together, and before that he didn't look it up, but then before this part he did.
In case you missed it, it's available to order today, and I wanted one as soon as possible to talk about on this channel, so that's why I got my order in as quickly as possible. But I guess, hey, at the end of the day, the notch is technically gone here. If you hated the notch on the MacBook, I guess the Neo is for you. How do you guys feel about Apple diving into the cheaper end of the lineup? In my opinion, this makes iPads way harder to justify for educational purposes, ultimately because this thing is still running Mac OS at the end of the day, which you can just do so much with, and I'm so thankful that Apple Silicon has enabled affordability like this. Drop all those thoughts in the comments below. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, those are great takes from Drew. I have nothing to disagree with. I don't think I need to react to anybody else who hasn't yet had hands-on. Has Marquez posted anything new? No. Man, the problem is, like, I would love if there was like a Galaxy S26 Ultra proper review for me to react to. I guess I can look if at least GSM Arena has maybe posted something. Guys, let me know. Is there anything great in terms of recent content? Like, Mr. Rooster Boss does one of the worst battery tests. He's the only guy where Samsung wins against iPhone. Like, to me, it doesn't matter which one wins. I think they both offer mostly enough battery life on the Pro Max and the Ultra. But like, his methodology is whack in comparison to others. I can look up if there's anything. And also, I can look up for those of you who are really, really into the 12th gen iPad. Apple Newsroom. Okay, so Apple did not announce anything spontaneously today that they haven't announced yet, which, yeah, is pretty much what I expected. MacBook Neo. Yeah, GSM Arena does not yet have a battery or just a review of the Galaxy S26 Ultra. I can check if there's anything new on like 9 to 5 Mac and Mac rumors. Now, I know that, like, for example, there have been like some leaked benchmarks for the iPad Air, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, we already have iPads with M4 chips. It shouldn't be that surprising. It's probably going to throttle more than the M4 iPad Pro, but that's really like, that's a different discussion than like a Geekbench test. That one should be unaffected. It will be slightly affected by the different binning process or by the different like end stage of the binning, but it's still fine. The MacBook Neo has the most recycled content of any Apple product. That's nice. Available for pre-order. Yeah, okay. I actually didn't see that. I guess my eyes kind of just like automatically corrected to it being a white keyboard. It's actually off-white. And here it has a clear pinkish hue, clearly has a yellow hue, and this is blue. Right, so yeah, Apple actually bothered to make this a really vibrant product. I guess its next competitor is the Framework 12. How much does that cost? It's a 12.2 convertible. I think it has a 1080p screen. Let's configure this bullshit. So it's, oh my God, can I please get the US pricing? Excluding taxes and duties. Wait, how do you offer German prices without taxes and duties? Is that because you can ship individual components? Do you not have to pay value added tax at that point? Okay, so I can change this to USD. Save and continue. Neo is better buy than iPad Air when you have to pay separately for Magic Keyboard. Well, you do not have to pay necessarily for the Magic Keyboard, but you have to pay for some kind of keyboard. And there are battery like Bluetooth keyboards for like $20. But yeah, if you are looking at like the first party Apple experience or even like the Logitech solution, then the MacBook Neo is a better deal. Especially if you're just focused on like getting shit done, you don't care about the maximum performance or anything. Okay, so $549. So we have some colors here: black, gray, lavender, bubblegum, and sage. Let's go with some fun stuff like bubblegum. So the chips here, you can already see, by the way, like 2 P cores, 4 E cores. I mean, can we find this chip 1315U, 1315U? Let's go to benchmarks. Can I please search 1315U? So let's see how that comparison performance. So yeah, it's way behind the A18 Pro in every way. It has like over 1/3 less multi-threading, single-threading performance. It has 40% less multi-threading performance. In this case, it would be more like 1/3 less, depending. Oh yeah, okay. So maybe this is more of the standard. I guess this is maybe like a low power configuration. This is way worse. And for $150, so that's substantially more expensive now. That's more comparable to the 512 gigabyte version. So 1334U. 1334U. How does that compare? It now comes close to multi-threading, but is still generations behind when it comes to single threading. So it's just not being saved, and it seems like most configuration perform under this 8 to 9,000 number. Okay, so we need this to get at least the multi-threading performance of the MacBook Neo. Let's give it 8 gigs of RAM. Which now makes an 829 product, mind you. Let's give it, because we can only give it 500 gigabytes. So now it's actually $200, $230 more expensive than the corresponding 512 gigabyte version MacBook Neo. Now, of course, I could easily add a lot of value because storage is just a lot cheaper on the PC side. But let's say I have like a hard cutoff. Oh, I still would need to buy Windows. That's insane. But I guess I can bring my own. Customization. Let's use. They say it's lavender, but they only really cover the trackpad. Power adapter. Oh, this one does not come with a power adapter, but at least it can come with a more powerful one. But now we are at $1,000. Wait, do I not get any ports by default? So let's say I want one USB-C and one USB-A for like my mouse because I'm a typical PC user. Yeah, and now I'm at the freaking $1,000. This is insane shit, guys. Like, look, I know when it comes to especially like stacking higher storage configurations, but if I'm buying this for my web browsing kids, then just the base performance to value proposition is terrible. Like, and pre-built, let's actually, and this is if you assemble it yourself, mind you. So if you are going to compare it, this is now $100 more expensive with a much worse chip. This 1315U, this one is just like, this is more like an A16 processor. Like, this is more comparable to the base iPad, or what might eventually be called iPad Neo. This is crazy pants. Right? And this is supposed to be a higher value brand. Like, and this isn't like, look at the product details, right? Look at actually, so the processor is weaker, right? And this processor will also need active cooling, so your experience is going to be worse. Okay, it gets Wi-Fi 6E, 1.3 kilograms, so it's similar in weight. 12.2-inch screen, smaller screen, still 60 hertz, over 400 nits of brightness, so most likely the iPhone is brighter. 50% of NTSC, if I'm not wrong, is worse than full sRGB. But let's say it's comparable, even though most tests that I've seen show that it has notable color tints. But it's also 1920 by 1200, which is going to be okay on a 12-inch screen, but it's still a lower pixel density and stuff like that. So it has a larger battery, but it needs this because when I actually look up this chip, i3 1315U, right? Oh God, why can I not do that? So, Intel, tell me which generation of chip is this architecturally, and therefore tell me. Okay, we can look at the German website just for a moment. It's Intel 7 base, so it's going to be like way less efficient than TSMC 3 nanometer. This is more like TSMC 8 nanometer, which doesn't exist, but it's somewhere between TSMC 10 and 7 nanometers. This is going to be way less efficient. to a crazy amount. We have Angelica saying hi, one of our MarkTech Pro Max supporters. Guys, as a reminder, we are now over 2.5 hours into the stream. Still have plenty of you watching. Thank you so much for that. Please support this channel by subscribing, liking the video, sharing it out with anybody who think might enjoy it. Comment live, but also please comment afterwards just on the video regularly. That helps with the algorithm. You can leave a super chat or super sticker right while I'm live, support me here directly, or you can become a channel member here on YouTube or support her over on Patreon. Okay, so that's about it for like what even is then the pricing of like Dell right now? Because I know that the latest XPS is super expensive. But like what website? Yeah, stay on USA. So $699. What do we get for $699? This is the 16-inch. Okay, for comparison. Okay, this is an older device, right? QHD plus mini LED. Man, this really shows just how freaking garbage the framework is. Look at what you get in a device where it's pre-built, right? For now, yes, this is apparently a $470 discount from MSRP, but you should never buy a Dell product at MSRP, right? You get 1 terabyte of storage, 16 gigs of RAM. You get a Lunar Lake chip, so a much newer generation. This is N3B based, so it's much closer from the actual node. It's not going to give you the same single core performance, but it's actually going to give you potentially pretty decent graphics performance. You should buy this in like the Windows range, never this. And this is why I always say, I do not think that Apple's value proposition is a slam dunk. They like to be paid for what they offer. And they do not feel as it is necessary to do this kind of discounts. This rhymed. But this is why competition is good. And this is why I always point out, just a cheaper product here from Apple is already a good thing. If that product is not cheap enough, then you will see discounts, right? If this product is more than cheap enough, right, then you will see others having to adjust the pricing of their products. And that's good for all of us. I don't think you can do anything with this MacBook that you can do on an iPad A16. You can. You have all the apps that are on macOS. You have OBS. You have third-party customization software, like the way I customize my fans. Granted, that's not that necessary, but even the way I customize my screen by making it 16:9 for my screens. Obviously, the OBS that I use for streaming here. There are all those emulators that don't run as well on iPad, actually, because iPads do not have JIT, I believe it's called, just-in-time execution. Basically, that's necessary for an emulator to exactly mimic the capabilities of some other chip that's not basically on the same architecture and everything. So, no, you can do a lot here that you can do. You can run virtual machines like here, like my Parallels, where I run full Windows. You have Xcode for programming, which you don't get. Like you have app-specific features, like Final Cut offers features on the Mac that it doesn't on iPad OS. Yeah, there is a lot. Can you emulate Linux or Windows on iPad? No. Okay, so you were not responding to me. You were responding to 79 JPR. Yeah, I agree with you here, Gustafon. Thank you. This is why I tell you guys, talk with each other. And that's why I also recommend joining the Discord, because you can talk with a lot of similarly minded people over there, getting their takes and seeing what they think. I'm still, guys, waiting. Do you have anything that I think should react to? Because look, I know that like the Xiaomi 17 Ultra became more official and everything, but there's still no big videos from it. Like Supersev did like a camera comparison between the iPhone and like his direct comparisons. I don't really need those that much. I guess like did Max Tech do like a side by side Galaxy S26 Ultra versus iPhone 17 Pro Max, because they did the camera, but then oh god, I hate AI. That's partially why I stopped watching like Guga Foods. Um, like I hate when they replace B-roll with AI. It always looks so bad because they don't even use like the best AIs, or they don't know how to do the prompts. Ugh. This is not an anti-AI channel, but I'm also definitely not like your traditional like super pro AI bro or whatever, right? So a camera comparison here. Is there really not like no what is the tech chap doing? I guess he was also at the event, would be my assumption. Galaxy S26 Ultra real world review. So that's not a full-on review. Samsung Galaxy hands-on. Yeah, that's not going to give you a comprehensive image. If you posted this 5 days ago, then he basically just told you his impression after a day or at most 2 of using it. I don't like that type of stuff. KevChat, separate note, do I have iPad? I'm wondering if it's worth installing iPadOS 26.3. Yes, and it's actually better than iPadOS 26, 26.1, 26.2. I always have my iPad Pro next to me while I'm streaming. Streaming from my MacBook, I'm watching my video, making sure that there are no tech issues on my iPad, and I'm reading your comments on the iPad. Okay. Is there anything? Because I would like to just make it roughly like around 3 hours. Yesterday we streamed for 4 hours, but I think that would probably go a little bit too far for today. My voice is just not gonna handle it too much. Tech Spurt. That's comparisons. That's check chap. I'm not sure. I have never watched the Tech Spurt. Is that a good channel? Like, how big are they? Not that I should be like the one choosing. Oh, it's 1.35. I don't know. Why have I never watched anything from this person? Tech Talk TV. That's not really a review, but whatever. Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra versus Pixel 10 Pro XL. That's actually interesting. I think I'll watch it, give it a chance, see if I like him as a content creator. I think now that I see his face, I slightly am reminded of who this is. Gustafan saying, I want to buy this Neo, but I don't know. Should I wait to see the price will come down for the M3 or M4 with 16 gigabytes? Yes. If you can afford to wait at least a little bit and see how this impacts like the used market, the discount market, I think that would be smart. By the way, Apple side doesn't allow to trade an iPad to buy MacBook. Well, I guess they don't want you to think that the iPad is as dead as Drew from Tailosive Tech think it is.
Both is my...
Okay, let's see. Let's put this video at like 1.2, and let's see if I actually like this video. Riley asking, Subway Surfer City gameplay when? Yeah, oh, Mr. Mobile has a Pixel 10a review of a product that's basically the exact same product as the Pixel 9a. But I actually do want to see how the Galaxy S Ultra compares to the Pixel. Let's get to 0 and let's get started.
Now, do you have buckets of cash to spend on your next blower? And do your nipples get...
A nice British accent, that's a plus. Clearly did a dirty joke in the making, that's a plus.
hard enough to split atoms when you think about AI? If that was
Riley saying this guy is your favorite. Nice, nice. Yeah, I now remembered him. Now that I can clearly hear the British accent, I guess I kind of my brain forgot his face, but maybe not his voice, which is a great compliment to his voice. I guess not such a great compliment to his face, but I didn't mean it like that, I promise. Kevchata saying I'm downloading iPad OS 26.3 right now because of you, so I'm blaming you if anything happens. Gee, bro, at that point though, you then owe me a super chat during the next stream. But also, guys, don't forget 26.3.1 is about to come out to offer compatibility with the new products. It might come out tomorrow, might come out today, who knows, might come out very early next week. So if you are upgrading to 26.3, you will soon be upgrading to 26.3.1. Just warning you. If you are not as frequent of an upgrader, you don't always want to invest the time in it, just make sure you understand.
Double yes, then ruddy eck, do I have a video for you? Because clasped here in my greasy mitts, I've got two of the biggest, shiniest, most wallet-drainingly expensivest smartphones.
I mean, the Pixel 10 Pro is noticeably less expensive now that it's been a while on the market. And there are some early launch discounts on the Galaxy, less so in the United States, but plenty here in Europe. So, But yeah, I mean, if you compare them to the price of the Pixel 10a or the iPhone 17e, sure.
Can bag in 2026. Google's Pixel 10 Pro XL and Samsung's fresh new Galaxy S26 Ultra in a bit of head-to-head fisticuffs type action. They'll both absolutely knacker your savings, although Samsung is currently offering pre-order deals, so check out the links in the video description for more on that. Okay. Which blower is best for snapping cats, playing ridiculous games, and surviving the longest of long days? Well, I've used them both as my full-time smartphones. Here's my comparison, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe, ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So stick the Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra right next to the Pixel 10 Pro XL. You'll probably notice that they're both bloody massive. The S26 Ultra is just about the lightest.
Kev saying, I downloaded iOS 26 on my mom's iPhone 16 and noticed it get hot sometimes. That's why I don't. Well, iPads have been far less impacted by like the more demanding nature of iOS 26. Plus, it has drastically improved. I really recommend you then upgrade your mom eventually to like 26.3. That's noticeably better in those regards. And then 26.4 actually solves my last long-standing like visual bug on iOS. It actually never was a bug on iPadOS, which is control center stutter. When you were switching from one control center page to the next, it would be like almost like a shader compilation issue in a game, right? Just like a sub 1 FPS frame drop or whatever. Yeah, that's weird, but it seems to have been fixed in the latest 26.4 betas. So I hope 26.3.1 takes that improvement and also fixes that last issue for regular
this pair, but
users.
frankly, they both function perfectly well as paperweights or door stoppers. Oh, hey, if you're in the mafia, you could always tie each one to the leg of an informant before hoying them in the river. And the Pixel 10 Pro XL may be the heavier of the two, but it's also the easier to use one-handed thanks to that convenient finger shelf.
Yeah, and that's also how a big benefit of the Plateau. Now, it does not offer you a finger shelf on top, only down below, but it still does its job.
Actually, the camera bump can't really get the same effect here on the S26 Ultra. It doesn't really work.
In a weird
and this
way,
pair sports
right?
a regular metal frame, no titanium sadly.
It's a regular aluminum frame. Titanium is still a metal, but okay.
On this year's Galaxy S26 Ultra. But hey, at least Samsung went with a matte finish, unlike Google's super shiny Pixel 10 Pro XL. Which
yeah, the problem with super shiny on aluminum frames is aluminum is easier to scratch than stainless steel or titanium, so that shininess is going to pick up scratches much easier. If you remember, for example, the diamond cut chamfered edges on like the iPhone 5 and 5S, right? They were beautiful up front, but they would really easily scuff and scratch.
As you can see there, a bit spunky. And they both seem pretty durable so far. I've chucked them in the same pocket quite a lot this past week. Although, having said that, a wee bit of the paint is actually starting to scratch off already here at the top end of the Galaxy S26 Ultra, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, but that can happen with every aluminum device without a case.
Gorilla Glass Victus 2 front and back here on the Pixel. Whereas the S26 Ultra has got a Victus 2 arse, but then up front it's Armor 2 glass. And this is not only more scratch resistant than Victus 2, but it also kicks reflections right in the tits. So we aim this.
It is, though, noticeably more reflective than the Galaxy S25 Ultra. I actually got a chance to check it out yesterday, and it clearly is worse than the S25 Ultra. I've seen some people say that's only with the display off. Okay, but to me it looked like that with display on or off. What I noticed when the display was on and even with privacy mode turned off was that the viewing angles actually were worse than the S25 Ultra. Thankfully, the shop had an S25 Ultra right next to it, and noticeably worse than my iPhone 17 Pro Max, even with a protective glass cover on top of it.
Pair of the Fierce Studio lights, you'll see there's less glare reflecting off the Samsung. Now, you've got a decent selection of colours for them both as well.
What's
These are actually my favourites.
Grippy iPhone case with camera button cover for the 16 I just ordered. I do not offer use stuff like that. I use like Apple's. Sorry, I need to eat something. Still need to finish like my calamari from yesterday. I just usually use Apple's leather or now tech woven cases, or I get like the clear case. This year I didn't get the clear case from Apple. I got one from ESR, I believe, and that one has like an integrated little kickstand, but it's not close to me right now because I was showing it off yesterday. Oh, no, it actually is close to me right now. I showed it off yesterday. So this one has an integrated little kickstand. It always is difficult to open when the iPhone is not inside, but it's not actually a problem. And that's what I use. This was $17, and my iPhone right now is in the dark blue or midnight, whatever it's called, a tech woven case from Apple. So I have two cases depending on what I like to do. Plus I have either I use this one with the kickstand or I use the Belkin MagSafe puck basically to use my iPhone as the continuity camera for my MacBook.
Right here, sort of an indigo-y blue for the Galaxy and a lovely sort of light, fresh green for the Pixel.
Yeah, I think they call this color violet, but this is indigo blue. I'm a little bit colorblind, but even I can see that.
And yes, thankfully it is a matte finish around back for them.
Yeah, right here, under very bright light, it's like ever so slightly violet.
So it does a pretty good job of repelling fingery, greasy, grimy muck. And they're both IP68 water and dust resistant. So you can submerge them fully in the drink, roll them around in sand and dirt and dust, no worries. Now both the Samsung and Google smartphones boast an in-display ultrasonic fingerprint sensor which is pleasingly responsive on both. Even if your hands happen to be wet or a bit mucky or sticky or whatever, no worries. You're basically straight in there. Although you do have Face Unlock also as a backup. And then once you're actually in there, well, it's Android 16 on the pair of them, but in a lovely stock Android version here on the Google Pixel smartphone, whereas on the Galaxy S26 Ultra, you do have Samsung's One UI version 8 slathered
It's actually One UI 8.5.
all over that. But hey, 7 years of guaranteed Android OS updates and 7 years of security patching with the pair of them as well. So chances are when they're finally out of support, we'll all be living in bunkers under the bloody earth anyway. And personally, I've got to say, I do prefer the clean...
Everyone is freaking depressed right now with the war and everything. He did post it like recently, right? Yeah, 5 hours ago. So everyone is reacting to the freaking Iran war.
Vibes of stock Android here on the Pixel 10 Pro XL compared with One UI. You see, Samsung happens to duplicate a lot of the apps and services you already get with Android. Smart home shenanigans, health tracking stuff, you've got an internet browser. And you know, while the Galaxy apps and services are absolutely fine, they don't really add anything usually.
Yeah, unfortunately, like it's not like Samsung gives you like a ton of extra cloud storage or anything, but I'm still glad that the competition exists for this.
You don't already get with
it would be bad if all extra money or all extra data that you feed your phone just always automatically went to Google and like no other company could benefit from it. That just would be really bad for us all.
Those Google efforts. And both phones offer some brilliant tools like a bit of call screening, and basically works the same way on both phones, allowing you to find out who is calling and what they want before you decide, pick up or piss off. And the Pixel 10 Pro XL also boasts an excellent selection of safety and emergency features, including car crash detection, bit of Pixel satellite SOS shenanigans, all that good.
Wait, Does Samsung not have
Good
satellite
stuff.
emergency?
And let's face it, in the battle of the AI assistants, it ain't even close. It's a complete mismatch. If Gemini is a lovely cruise around the Caribbean, then Bixby is a wet weekend in Wolverhampton.
Samsung does have Gemini. It's built in. You're literally getting Gemini Pro for free.
Squatting in a tent that a feral badger just shit in. But of course, you've still got Gemini here on the Galaxy S26 Ultra, so you can just completely ignore Bixby, so it doesn't even matter.
Did you even test Bixby? Because supposedly they improved Bixby. Let me make sure. I was pretty sure that Samsung does have satellite connectivity. Galaxy S26 Ultra satellite emergency. Samsung to Galaxy smartphones across the world. Wait, is this the first time that Samsung has offered satellite emergency services? Is this for real? Will the S20 is expanding for select Galaxy smartphone through ongoing partnership? Samsung confirms satellite connectivity for Galaxy S26 and more. Wait, but the iPhone has had it since the iPhone 14, even the base model. And Pixel got it like 2 years later. Wait, does Samsung have car crash detection? I didn't even think that these... I almost thought that like the S25 Ultra must have had it. Does the Galaxy S24 Ultra have car crash detection? Wait, that doesn't answer my question. Let's ask Google Gemini. Has been officially unveiled and features a hidden car crash detector wake-up sensor, although Samsung has not yet enabled a fully functional car crash detection feature for all users? Really? Like, these are features that were on, like, you know how people are like, well, Android has had this feature for years when we talk about shit like widgets, but stuff that the iPhone has had for 3.5 years, even on base models, like, they do have all the sensors necessary. Although leaked firmware files in 1 year suggest a feature, it's not as... Yeah, I know the Google Pixel has it. It added it later than the iPhone, but the Pixel added both satellite emergency stuff and car crash detection. I believe like 2 years after the iPhone 14 added it. Jesus, that's crazy. Why do not more reviewers point out stuff like that?
And speaking of AI, hooray, yes, both Samsung and Google have leaned super hard.
Satellite emergency service. Now, there's some that do internet, but basically it's either SMS or phone calls in areas where you don't have regular internet. So imagine if you're hiking in the outdoors, like mountainside or whatever, or some removed river or lake, especially something highly elevated where maybe the signal strength is difficult, right? And let's say some of you have an emergency, right? And you want to call somebody. At least you want to let them know where you are. Maybe you just want to send your exact location. God knows what might happen. Obviously, the worst case scenario for something like this is like you break your leg, you fall down, you literally cannot move. Potentially you're bleeding out or whatever. Oh my God, this video is going to get demonetized for freaking shocking content. YouTube is weird. And basically, when you use that, you connect, instead of like to a radio tower, like a 5G tower, you connect to the satellites directly, right? And because that's much more taxing, right? You don't send like regular 5G data at like 1 gigabits per second. You send an SMS or maybe a phone call. And Apple, for example, when they launched the iPhone 14, they introduced this and they said that they would offer you this feature 2 years for free. So they never turn this feature off. That's also something that people don't like misunderstand. But the idea was that for 2 years, if something happens, if you call or you send an SMS to like an emergency provider, that's free. But afterwards, you could still place that call, but now you would pay some additional money, which should be very much well worth it to save your freaking life. But because Apple probably has not found a good pricing situation, or they didn't want to deal with the backlash, they have given users free emergency SOS services with every year ever since then. So the iPhone 14 launched like late 2022. That's now into 2024. Then Apple added an extra year for 2025, and now also an extra year for 2026. Basically, what people think is that Apple is just going to give it indefinitely to all iPhones that stay connected to this. Yeah, so I thought that Samsung would have matched it like at least last year. So the fact that it's only happening this year is kind of crazy, because there have been multiple stories of people having their life saved by this feature.
Into artificial intelligence these past few years. So let's chat AI, or rather, I'll chat AI. You will probably bugger off to the next chapter. One of the big new features for the Pixel 10 series.
Why do you not leave me chapter to skip forward to then? Because I do not give a fuck about AI. I want to see your camera comparison. Okay, so I guess we're making screen comparisons here. I think I can skip to this.
You can upgrade that to up to 1 terabyte. You'll also need buckets of cash or just a spare liver or two to do that upgrade. And I really love the displays on both the Pixel 10 Pro XL and the Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra.
So there's some drama if you follow me on Twitter or you join our Discord. Once again, link in the description of this channel. Samsung advertised this panel as 10-bit to the press. Then on their website, they mentioned that it's 16 million colors, which would correspond to 8-bit rather than 10-bit. 10-bit corresponds to 1 billion colors. And basically, we now know it's an 8-bit panel with FRC. Which a lot of panels out there are. Some are native 10-bit, but they don't lie, right? I don't really notice the difference between 8-bit with FRC and 10-bit. My MacBook Pro screen is 8-bit with FRC, which also is hilarious. That means Samsung has been doing just regular 8-bit for years and years, even though even the iPhone 17e now is 10-bit. Let me, like 10-bit or 8-bit with FRC. Let me actually look up the tech specs for the iPhone 16e. Was that 1 billion colors, or was that... we just saw that the MacBook Neo, for example, supports 1 billion colors, so that's 8-bit with FRC. iPhone 16e tech specs, because I know that the 17e offers 1 billion colors. Wait, what? Tech specs. Oh no, here. Do they mention it for the display? Display 460 ppi. So it's higher resolution than 1080p. That's also what many people ignore. They complained a lot about like 830p on the iPhone XR and the iPhone 11, but suddenly the iPhone 17e has actually higher pixel density than most phones in its class. Now suddenly that doesn't matter. Wait, can I just not tap on this? Yeah, that because I know in the compare page that's not something that Apple brings up, but they will often have like tech specs for older devices. Does it work here? Oh, that is. Wait. Why did I thought that was a Wikipedia? Oh, I kind of skipped over this. I'm stupid. Sorry. 2 million in contrast to 1. Oh, they do not actually mention how many colors it supports. So I guess it's then like a standard 8-bit. Because on the 17e, I know they do mention that it's 1 billion colors, don't they? First of all, let me go to Newsroom. Let's check if Apple maybe launched a new iPad. Oh, they haven't. iPhone 17e. Explore and Tech Specs. You can see here. Wait, where did I see that it has a billion colors? Is that like in some other kind of support page? 6.1 inches display. Or did that just refer to the types of content, like it can play back as video? Does Apple not mention it here? Did they mention it for like the iPhone Pros? I'm starting to get really, really tired. I'll guess I'll wrap up the video quickly, and then I'll finally rest, and there will not be a stream tomorrow. 1000x matte brightness. Wait, I could have sworn that there is like a color. What is the command for search on macOS? Because I don't. Oh, you know what I'm gonna do? Gonna make myself big for a moment. Then I'm gonna Command F. Oh yeah, I just Command F. Billion. No, it's not on the page. Okay, interesting. I thought that was here. That's interesting. Guys, if you know where I can find this spec, let me know. But it's apparently not inside Tech Specs. But it's something that they do note as tech specs for like MacBooks, which is interesting. Let's just continue with the video.
Ultra. They're both uber spacious, 6.8 inches on the Pixel versus 6.9 on the Samsung. So ideal if you want to just relax with some cinematic shenanigans. It's LTP OLED tech on both. Nice poppy colors, crisp contrast, and high resolution as well. 2992 by 1344 on the Pixel versus 3120 by 1440 on the Galaxy. So those images pin sharp, packed with fine detail.
Windows key. Yeah, I love you too, Riley. Kev Chatter, are there more Apple releases news this week? I mean, there could be like a new base iPad, but I wouldn't know why Apple wouldn't just launch it then on Monday, right? Like, I don't think so. I think given that they made a full event out of this, given that they allowed pre-orders today, I think that's it for this week.
Full streaming support for HDR10 Plus in the likes of Netflix.
One thing that I'll look up if like 9to5Mac or Mac Rumors have mentioned if like maybe iOS 26.3.1 would be out, because that could be like, I mean, it's a week before this device has come out. Okay, not a 9to5Mac, something on Mac Rumors. Hands-on with the new MacBook Neo. Like what would it even say, like, really?
I'm in New York and have
okay, they just show it from like different angles. That's really not like groundbreaking journalism.
And both perfectly bright as well. The Galaxy S26 Ultra's Armor 2 screen also helps to kick reflections right in the twat. And you got the extra brightness mode on there should you ever need it. You got the usual eye comfort shenanigans on both as well, and you do have.
Why does it have an extra? I turned on something because in the shop the Galaxy was noticeably dimmer than my iPhone 17 Pro Max. I remember like turning on some features, and I turned off obviously privacy mode off for that. But I guess it has an even brighter mode. Why is everything hidden behind extra settings? Why don't I just have automatic brightness?
Eyes feature here on the Pixel, which you can tick if you are more sensitive to OLED flicker. However, both the Pixel and the Galaxy do still max out at 480 Hz for that dimming, which ain't great compared with a lot of Chinese.
It also is completely meaningless. I have not meant. By the way, I thought that the Pixel actually maxed out at 240, didn't it? The iPhone also has an alternative to pulse width modulation, but I've tried it on or off. I tried like Xiaomi's that do like 2000. It's not. It has no linear progression here at all. Like, it will not feel 4 times better or anything.
Rivals. And also, I gotta say, I absolutely effing adore the privacy display mode here on the Galaxy S26 Ultra. It is a proper game changer, and I don't hoy that term about willy-nilly like a lot of YouTubers. Like, to some of them, the game changes so bloody often, we don't even know what sodden game we're playing anymore. And this spangly new display tech basically deactivates specific pixels when you activate privacy display.
Half of the display, by the way. So if you choose to keep this on, you're downgrading your screen to less than 1080p, which is obviously going to be a really low pixel density. And since it's a Pentile matrix display, it's going to be an absolutely terrible subpixel matrix subpixel density too.
To greatly narrow the field of view. So only someone who's looking pretty much straight on at that screen can actually see what is happening.
So this effect is super duper pronounced if you do like these huge angle changes, which are really easy to do for the camera. I tried it out with the human eye. And I did like the over shoulder, right? I took where I stood and then I moved a little bit away and looked from the side. It definitely is more difficult to see, especially in max mode. But it does absolutely not look like this. Like for it to look like this, you would have to be like this. Like if your phone is like this, you would have to be like this. That's just... No, somebody snooping over your shoulder would still see it. And if you think you can hide it, like personal information from your girlfriend with this, I talked about this with a girl I know. It's like she was laughing her ass off at the idea that, like, at the very least, it will just get your girlfriend to ask, why do you have privacy mode on always at max settings?
And the best thing is you can have this automatically activate for specific apps like banking apps or dating apps perhaps. And it can also pop up if it automatically detects that you're entering a PIN or a password or something. And yeah, it's absolutely smashing. Means your Uncle Spurt can browse whatever sordid, smutty content my heart desires, even when I'm on the bus. It's not until I start taking my trousers off that people actually object and intervene.
Yeah, that's the kind of joke I would do. That's the kind of joke I do. Respect, I like this guy. Riley, I understand. Riley, by the way, you freaking asshole. You said that he is your favorite. He is your favorite? Aren't you forgetting like a big M in your life? Somebody you actually watch live, sometimes multiple times a week, for hours, talking in the chat, getting even your name mentioned, and talking with you on the Discord? Does iPhone have clone mode? I don't know what clone mode is, so I would assume no.
You got a stereo.
Is it like a privacy mode where like not all where you like have separate access to apps and stuff like that? Because then the answer is no, and it's something that I wish Apple would implement.
Speaker setup on both, but it's undoubtedly more impressive on Samsung's Galaxy S26 Ultra. Wee bit more powerful, certainly the clarity is stronger, and that bass is a bit beefier when you boost the volume all the way up. Now, the Bluetooth streaming is absolutely fine on both as well. You've got all the usual codec support, etc., so you can enjoy a good bit of high-res music. And hey, big differences when it comes to the performance here as well.
About like one game. I would love to see some actual benchmarks by like Dame Tech. Let's see some camera comparison stuff. Riley saying you have selective hearing. Yeah, when you have my beep in your ear.
You will notice if you check them out that Samsung's camera app is a wee bit denser than the Pixels.
Yeah, the Pixels is very much like the iPhone app. And Riley saying, no idea what you said a minute ago. Oh, Riley, also congratulations. You just turned into the #1 yapper. Kevchat saying, I don't use clone mods, but it's a plus for cheaters. Well, there are some scenarios, and I will be totally honest. Like, for example, like to get a little bit more serious for a moment, there are a lot of people, for example, living in abusive households, or you might be a more progressive individual, but your parents might not want you to live out your new world lifestyle, or maybe they have maybe you want to have a different religion than your parents or something like that, right? And I absolutely 100% approve of such features because they help people like that. In fact, I have known multiple people who have needed that kind of help in their life to live a regular life without like their either significant other or even worse, usually an abusive parent learning about it. So that I absolutely approve of. I think privacy mode achieves none of that really, but maybe a little bit, like in the worst case scenario, like if you're getting like an image right before your very highly controlling dad or whatever. But clone mode is absolutely great, and it's something that, in fact, those people that I've interacted with, they've actually asked me, like, should I get an iPhone or Android? And because I knew of their situation in life, I actually recommended them an Android. I believe Samsung had a feature like that already back in like the Galaxy S8 days. So yeah, I've been doing that for quite a while.
You still get plenty of little decent tools and toggles here on the Pixel as well, including a fairly simple, straightforward Pro mode. If you count yourself as a pro photographer, you'll probably enjoy the likes of the Expert RAW mode here on the Galaxy S26 Ultra a lot more.
Okay,
And likewise
he
here on the
doesn't do a very in-depth comparison. I want to see the actual images.
S tends to brighten images to reduce
Riley, okay, that one is funny saying, wait, you mean people don't shove their religion in their parents' faces? It's actually, well, I would argue it's the other way around, right? And obviously some religions tend to be still a little bit stricter on these issues, but even more modern religions will still have people who live them out in very conservative ways. So yeah, I've seen it all here in Berlin.
shadowing, while also giving colours a proper kick up the cock, so they're warmer
Jesus, guy, he says cock more than I do.
and considerably more punchy. The end result is a bit more iPhone-y, while the Pixel 10 Pro XL mostly steers
And the iPhone has what? Say it with me. Photographic styles to compensate for that. Neither of these phones do, by the way.
towards a more natural, realistic vibe. And the Pixel absolutely smashes those high contrast shots, capturing impressive
That looks a bit overprocessed.
detail and balancing well with the natural tones. While the S26 Ultra again handles them well, but artificially brightens those
Yeah, but even then, I would still prefer a brighter image than on the Pixel, but a dimmer, less oversaturated one on the than on the Samsung.
darker sections. In softer light, both phones generally do well.
The Samsung actually looked better here. The Pixel looks like it looks sharp, but in a way it looks almost over-sharpened. Kevchat saying he gets away with curses because of that accent. Yeah, like especially the C word noticeably, right? Not the kikeriki C word, but the C female genitalia word, which also is a very different context in British and Scottish like dialect, right? So yeah, my accent is a mix of so much different stuff. I couldn't get away. I mean, I could a wee bit like I could mimic a British accent. Jesus, that wasn't even British. What am I doing?
The shutter speed, while undoubtedly slower, is still relatively quick. It's a little bit nippier here on the Samsung compared with the Google. And you can still expect plenty of fine detail packed into your pics. The Samsung manages to keep noise under tighter control with this generation, although night pics can look a bit crunchy as a result. And that focus can be a wee bit soft at times as well, which is rarely the case with the 10 Pro X.
Yeah, it seems like Google is better at focusing on smaller objects. Yeah. Also, you can see here, like Samsung clearly over-sharpened some of this stuff, like in the sky.
You'll get slightly less flaring of
Yeah,
light.
the Pixel handled that much better. That's very akin to the situations we saw yesterday in the comparison by Max Tech. Riley saying, what is this soy, rice, and shrimp? I'm eating like I know you meant the image with the rice, but like I love shit like this. I'm eating like calamari right now. Mon calamari. It's a trap.
Sources with Google's phone. And if you're trying to snap a moving target as well, a kid or a cat who just can't keep bloody still, well again, this is a Pixel victory. The S26 Ultra does really struggle with that at times, even during pretty strong daylight. And then here on the Pixel 10 Pro XL, you've got yourself a single 48 meg telephoto shooter, the 1/2.55 inch sensor. And it's got 5 times optical
He knows his tech specs in that regard. That's nice.
zoom. Whereas here on the Galaxy S26 Ultra, Samsung sports a dual 50 meg and 10 meg telephoto setup. So you've got 3 times optical zoom, that 10 meg shooter, as well as 5 times optical.
You know what? His British accent makes him also talk way slower. So I'm just gonna speed it up.
zoom with the 50 meg sensor. So the Galaxy S26 Ultra is more convenient for those mid-range portrait shots. Although I've got to say that bokeh effect is still a wee bit heavy.
That bokeh. Okay, there is no excuse for this. No amount of British English makes you say bokeh. Like Doki Doki Literature Club, that's the way he said bokeh. It's bokeh. It's bokeh for feel. Or it's like a very soft, it's like between an A and an E almost. It's a bokeh. And nobody says bokeh. Riley's saying, now I'm hungry. Well, yeah.
Standard here on the Galaxy S26 Ultra, so do like to...
No, I'm not going to say it. Eat my shorts. I'm going to do the Bart thing.
Dial down the effect strength on that one. You can mess around with it post-shooting anyway. With the telephoto sensors, the colours are once again boosted on the Samsung, no change there, while both phones top off at around 100 times zoom, and at great distances, the S26 Ultra does capture finer detail compared with the Pixel. And then the Pixel sports another 48 meg sensor for the ultra-wide shooter versus a 50 meg here on the Samsung. Now for your
Yeah, but they are functionally like not that far apart.
home movies, well, both of these smartphones can spaff out up to 8K
Okay, so he doesn't go, unfortunately, too much detail.
resolution video, although on the Pixel 10 Pro XL, you do have to switch on the Vision Boost feature, which then uploads your footage to the cloud to be upscaled there, as it's just shot in 8K natively here on the S26 Ultra. And you can shoot a bit of 4K 60 frames per second HDR footage.
I still have yet to see a single content creator to post an 8K video from the Samsung that actually looks better than a 4K video from the iPhone.
On either. And the S26 Ultra probably a better choice for your action cam moments thanks to its rather good horizontal lock feature. That has a serious impact on those shakes. As for your
Yeah, but again, it cuts down then to 1080p 30. Kev Chat saying you should do a regular stream making fun of this dude. Yeah, like I should do like a fake fun making because obviously he's a decent dude. I like his accent and everything, but I do react to all kinds of YouTubers, to all kinds of like tech related content on this channel. I mean, you know that, Kev Chata, you joined during my bigger streams, but usually whenever you join, I do like the more serious, like, oh, Apple announced something today, but hey, if you subscribe, hit the like button, or maybe even if you join our Discord, you will see we talk about a lot of fun stuff and make fun jokes and make very fun, very non-British accents.
Video. Well, again, the S26 Ultra does all of its processing on device with the Video Boost Smarts, while Google will need to upload your footage and process it online. And just shooting a bit of side-by-side video at 4K resolution.
Oh wow, this looks way better.
30 frames per second with HDR switched off here on the Pixel, and the Samsung as well. Got Video Boost turned on the Pixel, so I'll be uploading that video. Curtains are closed, only lights on, while the ones behind.
I guarantee you that the iPhone would look closer to this without having to upload the footage. This one just entirely confused by the red light.
And which one do you reckon does the better job? Personally, I reckon probably the Pixel, but...
I mean, it's not probably, but okay. I would love to see, by the way, the original, like, non-upgraded video.
Know in the comments below. And then lastly, hey, lights are back on, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he is this pale. He is British after all. But he looks better here. Like, it's basically a bit of a free tan for him.
You can see every sag and bag. But anyway, you've got a 42 megapixel selfie cam here on the Pixel versus 12 megs here on the Galaxy. But both phones can shoot 4K resolution footage, as I am doing right now, at either 30 or 60 frames per second, with a bit of HDR smarts as well. And there you have it, my lovelies. That in a delicious wee nutshell is my full...
That was a fun video, but guys, we've been streaming now for almost 3.5 videos. By now, over 85% of you from the peak have left, which I fully understand. I myself am getting tired. Before I leave you, I'm going to give you some big mark action. This was super fun. The MacBook Neo is a fun product. It's in some ways better than I expected, definitely because of its lower price. In some ways, it's a tad bit disappointing because of the 8 gigs of RAM. I would also love to see some details on things like the battery life and the storage speed. Like, that is interesting to me because if it's using an A18 Pro chip, that is limited by its PCIe bandwidth. But overall, a decent product for $600 should hopefully help older Macs get to an even lower price, so you can snatch those up, either used, refurbished, or generally discounted. Should help push the PC industry, hopefully back to slightly lower prices after getting a little bit crazy with RAM and storage pricing because of the all surrounding AI apocalypse, apparently. And overall, I just had a blast. You have so many people watching, so many likes, so many comments to react to. Riley already saying, take care, Riley. Thank you so much for joining. To anybody else who's watching and still enjoying in a way, please leave a like if you haven't yet done so. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more, and hit the notification bell. That way you are informed when I'm going live next. The best way to stay in touch with me is either through Twitter or through Discord. You'll find the link in for both of that in the description of this channel. And of course, beyond that, do all the YouTube jazz, as we call it around here: subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting. And whenever you catch me live, you can support me directly via super chats or super stickers, or you can become a channel member. Shout out to Angelica, Steve, Max, Maximus, and Jonathan, our MarkTech Pro Max level supporters here. Or you can go over to Patreon and support us over there if that's what you more feel like. Kevchata saying, for the end, I have iPad Air Generation 5. Would you upgrade to M3 or M4? No. Because on the iPad Air, I really think that you should only upgrade if you also get a nicer screen. Like, since you specifically added that you only use it for the basics, the speaker systems are technically better, but it's not as groundbreaking. There's more performance, obviously, and probably better battery life thanks to newer modems and everything, but it's just not going to be a transformative experience. If you want to upgrade to something, look at like an M2 or an M2 iPad Pro, because there was no M3 iPad Pro. There was only an M4 iPad Pro with tandem OLED, but that one is much more expensive. So maybe look at that in like a year, or maybe you can find it used at a much greater discount. But that would be roughly my recommendation. I also should probably shave this eyebrow a little bit, because it looks like it has a larger gap from my nose. So maybe I'll be much prettier during the next stream or something like that. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for watching, for all kinds of support, and I hope I'll see you soon. I'll probably take the day off tomorrow, but maybe be back on either Friday or Saturday to like summarize everything that's happened. And I'll hope I'll see you still then. This is MarkTech, tuning out.